sort of look younger. He's in daycare between us.
More like I'm in charge of it.
Okay, cool.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 2017 Fall Quarterly Meeting of the Tennessee Higher Education Commission meeting. I hereby call this meeting to order and would ask our secretary to please call the roll.
Evan Cope.
Here.
Dr. Dishner. Mentha Roach. Here. Vernon Stafford.
Here.
Mayor Wharton.
Here.
Tim Coben.
Here.
Frank Watson.
Here.
Tasha Winton.
Here.
Jimmy Johnston.
Here.
Treasurer Lillard.
Here.
Comptroller Wilson.
Present.
Jeremy Chisenhall.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, we have 12 present. We have a quorum.
Very good. Thank you, Madam Secretary. Next, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as presented. Motion, is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. All in favor, will do need a roll call?
I don't believe anyone is calling in.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I think we can do voice votes with no one on the phone.
Very good. Okay, all in favor signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries. The agenda is adopted. Next, members of the commission, we have consideration and approval of the minutes from the July 25th meeting. Chair will entertain a motion at this point.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries. All right. Let me first take a moment to introduce Tasha Winton from Chattanooga. She is our newest commissioner on the Tennessee Higher Education Commission, and we want to give her a warm welcome. We just visited for a few minutes before the meeting started and realized that we were in law school together. She was a couple of years behind me, so it's nice to have a fellow University of Memphis Law School a classmate here on the commission.
The commission needed more attorneys.
That's exactly right. So, Ms. Winton, do you want to say just a couple of words about yourself?
First, I have to figure out how to work the microphone. Oh, great. I'm already on. I don't have to figure it out. So somebody thought that through for me. So just want to say thank you to everyone for the warm welcome and looking forward to working with everyone. This is such a great board and such a privilege to participate in the higher education process. I'm usually in health insurance, so my world, this is a great reprieve from my world. So thank you all.
Thank you very much. All right, now on to my report. I want to comment first on the nature of the meeting today, and those of you who've been on the commission or who've attended our meetings over a period of time know and understand that the November meeting is a pivotal meeting because we review and recommend the appropriations, the tuition rates, the capital outlay, and obviously the maintenance request for the upcoming fiscal year. The recommendations you will see today focus on two things. First, meeting the Drive to 55 mandate, and second, improving affordability for our students and our families. To that second point, I want to take a moment to focus on the tuition recommendation before you this morning and this afternoon. The 2018-2019 tuition and fee increase that THEC is anticipating a recommendation is 0 to 3%, which represents the fourth consecutive lowest increase in our state in over 40 years. This accomplishment is due in large part to the state investing in higher education over the last 4 years, as well as institutions working to find places to be more efficient in how they do business. We are grateful to the governor and to the legislature for continuing to invest in our colleges and universities. And we are thankful to the institutions for working with us to provide high-quality, affordable education in Tennessee. This meeting is also important as it marks the beginning of the first phase of the implementation of the Focus Act for the Commission. On your agenda today, you will hear staff recommendations for severance for several of our locally governed institutions for capital management and procurement. This action marks the next step in independence for these former TBR universities and the first step for THEC on the road to granting control of these functions to the locally governed institutions. That concludes my report, and at this point, I'll call on our Executive Director, Mr. Mike Krause.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, appreciate everybody being here today. Want to start off on somewhat of a somber note just to acknowledge recently that THEC First is now a 50-year-old organization. This is our 50th year, and our founding executive director, John Folger, passed away a few weeks ago. I had the opportunity to sit right here at this table once and have lunch with John and hear directly from Dr. Folger about why THEC was started. And if you hear about what the predicate behind our 1967 founding was, it's remarkably relevant. 7. It was to coordinate the activities of higher education to benefit students. And staying true to that, we think, of course, is the best way to honor Dr. Folger. Of course, want to also honor our Executive Director Emeritus, Dr. Rhoda, who is with us here today. We always appreciate his presence here. As you all would imagine, over the course of the last 15 months, I have called Dr. Rhoda on several occasions to say, what do we do? And as always, he has provided great wisdom and counsel. Want to say something for a moment about one of our staff members here. Our absolute number one asset here, and it's not a close second, is our team. I think you all have seen we have a very uniquely qualified staff. And recently, one of our staff enhanced those qualifications. Where is newly named Dr. Jason Lee? Please stand up.
Ooh.
Dr. Lee successfully defended his dissertation on Monday at an esteemed higher education institution that Chancellor Tidings will greatly approve of at the University of Georgia. And we're very proud of you, Dr. Lee, truly. Next, I want to call on Troy Grant. One of the things I think everyone sees here is there's the policy work that THEC does, which is focused on the really big picture of setting the right tone, focused on the Drive to 55 in Tennessee. But then we also have a programmatic side here at the Commission. And we're really proud of the fact we have thousands of students directly connected through high schools to THEC via either the Gear Up program or the Advise Tennessee program. Troy Grant leads that work. I'll tell you the work began in 2005 when a proposal that Dr. Rhoda helped lead assembly of was written in about 24 hours to apply for this new federal program called Gear Up. We recently learned that we'll be receiving our third consecutive Gear Up grant of $24 million. Let me give some perspective to the Commission on this. Our annual state appropriation for operating is for payrolls about $2.5 million. We'll be receiving 3 times that every year from this grant. It's a great example of us, we think, being efficient with state dollars by taking an entrepreneurial approach. So in light of that grant award, we wanted to ask Troy Grant to brief you on what will be unfolding over the next several years with Gear Up. Troy?
Good morning, everyone. So just a little bit of background on Gear Up. Gear Up is a federal discretionary grant program. Really has 3 primary goals. To increase the preparation for students, both academically and socially, to transition successfully into higher education and to graduate from high school. The second goal is to successfully make that transition, to graduate from high school and to make the leap to higher education. And then the third is really about building systemic change within communities around college going. So building awareness of communities, of their families, students around this process. So we tend to work in communities where college going is not the norm. We're building a new muscle in these communities and working with these communities to expand this college going culture that we'd like to see statewide. So a little bit of background to what Mr. Krause has already indicated. In 2005, we received our first grant. It was rurally focused. We had 9 rural districts. Brian Nolan, I know, was very involved in that process as well. We had a 10.7 percentage point increase in college going over the life of that grant. Thus far in our current grant, we are serving 15 districts across the state. We've had a 9 percentage point increase in college going in the first 3 years of data that we have. That doubles the state average. So to give that perspective, even within the context of a promise kind of a world, we've doubled that state average, a 25 percentage point increase in FAFSA filing in these communities. Over this current grant, we've clocked more than 2 million hours of student services, and that looks like advising services, college going, mentoring, working with parents around preparing their students to make this leap to higher education. So we did receive a new Gear Up grant, and I would just recognize I have a team of folks that we have in the back. If they could stand, this is our Gear Up and College Access and Success team who were instrumental in writing this project. I will brag on this too, because this is something that's kind of a big deal. We received a perfect score on this grant application, which was just
The only one in the nation, by the way.
It's a big deal. So thanks, guys. So 2017 is this new project. You guys can sit down. So it's a 7-year-long project, $3.5 million a year for 7 years again. We have two really components of this project. Statewide services, which would include our statewide initiative College for TN.org, the Path to College events, which have expanded greatly over the last couple of years. This would be the College Application Week, Tennessee FAFSA Frenzy. So the work that we're doing around FAFSA Frenzy, that's being done across sectors. That's being done with Department of Ed, with THEC, but a lot of the materials that are paid for, the resources, the trainings, that all comes out of Gear Up funds. So we're going to be able to continue doing those for 7 more years. Statewide college access, professional development around college going and success, and then direct services. We are going to be selecting new schools. We will start reaching out to schools in the next couple of weeks. These schools, we will have a new cohort of kids that we will follow. They will be the class of 2023, which coincidentally will be the graduating class of the Drive 55. So these are the students who will be completing their associate's degree in 2025, which is exciting. The direct services will include hiring a site coordinator, again, academic interventions, mentoring, college visits, and the like. In terms of timeline, we will plan on releasing an RFP. And so for those of you who do have connections with school districts, I think this is a wonderful opportunity. In January, we will be inviting schools to apply. The applications we do in late February. We will have team interviews with school teams, and we anticipate selecting schools in April, and then they will hire staff. We will train that staff, and then they will provide services starting in the fall. So we're excited. I think there's a huge opportunity to do wonderful work for the state of Tennessee through this project. So any questions? Great, thank you.
The last thing, Mr. Chairman, I would just say in closing, and I'm going to give a full credit to a lot of this to Treasurer Lillard. The fiscal recommendations we're going to talk about today are very positive. And we think we have reason to believe that the budget in the state this year, though certainly not what we saw last year, will facilitate support of a lot of higher education investments. And one of the things the treasurer shared with us last week that I would really urge the commission to take up as our own is times will not always be good. In fact, they may not be good as soon as next year. We will be requesting from each of the institutions beginning in the next few months a stress test exercise so that we can begin to build into what would the scenario look like with the funding formula at different gradients. I think many of you have thought through that already, but it matters, in our opinion, to have everybody around the table collectively having a conversation so that when a rainy day does come, we're not surprised about what it looks like. And frankly, to make sure that when the state budget is cut, our first look is not raising tuition, but instead finding a middle ground for student affordability. So I want to thank the treasurer for putting that on our radar. We'll let everybody get through this commission meeting and the holidays likely, and then after the new year, would really like to begin detailed discussions with our LGI and system colleagues around using this time to plan. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Very good, thank you. Any questions for Mike? Thanks very much, Mike. Next, we'll have our institutional reports, and I will first recognize Chancellor Tidings, the Board of Regents.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman Cope, Director Krause, and the Commission for allowing me to be here with you today. With regard to fall enrollment, I do want to report that we were up 2.9% in our community colleges and 4% for our TCATs over the previous year. And while we know that having headcount is important and enrollment being up, what's more important are our completion numbers. And I'm also happy to report to you that we awarded a total of 21,855 degrees and technical certificates last academic year, which was a 3% increase over the previous year. That means an additional 800 awards were given by the Tennessee Board of Regents. And as a whole, our system is ahead of the completion rate for our Drive to 55, so we feel well assured that we will meet that goal by 2025. So the numbers look quite good. I'd also like to talk for a moment about our work that we've been doing with Reconnect. We have been meeting and working with THEC for several months to ensure that our campuses are prepared for the Reconnect students when they begin next fall. At the central office, we have a TBR Reconnect team, and we have established teams at all 40 of our college campus level so that they are putting in place today activities and processes that will reflect what the adult student needs. They're looking at being more creative with the hours that courses are being offered. They're looking at support services that will need to be put in place for the adult student. Some of our colleges have already jumped ahead in that process. For instance, Pellissippi State began funding their own version of Reconnect this term. And I'm very excited to tell you that they had a 33% increase in their adult population. So we're excited to predict that for the fall of next year, we see thousands of students coming back to school as a result of the new Reconnect process. We're also looking at our Tennessee Promise early results. I'm very excited to tell you about those today. We reported that the first group, the first cohort, the 2015 group, graduated this past spring. Our success rate for that group of students, I'm happy to say, is at 56%. That's compared to a national average of a success rate for that same group of students at right around 17%. So we're extremely pleased with the early results. We do have some students that are in their 5th term of eligibility, so we'll have final numbers to report to you at the end of this 5th term. Also, a word about our new Tennessee Trained program and our new warranty program. I think many of you were at the governor's conference and you heard Mike and I were able to talk at that conference, and we announced a Tennessee Trained program. This is a program that we've developed in conjunction with the Tennessee Department of Economic Development. It's a training program for our directors of ECD and the directors of ECD at Economic Development. We also, since that announcement, have had communications with the Department of Labor, who also want to be engaged in these training programs. We will begin those in the early winter so that we'll have people going through the process of determining exactly what they need to do when companies come to the state of Tennessee and are looking at us to relocate, and also very scripted in how we are working with existing business and industry, making sure that we are meeting their needs and we are doing exactly what they need for us to be doing in our curriculum and in our continuing education training. Also happy to talk about our warranty program. Beginning with the fall class of next year, we are going to extend a warranty to every student that graduates from our technical programs of study, that if and when their first year of graduation they are employed and the employer says they do not have the skills for which we say we have trained them for, we will take them back and retrain them for free. We truly believe in what we're doing with our students. We've had high success rate, a 97% completion rate for all national and state licensure exams within our system, and an 87% placement rate. So we believe that we can truly stand behind what we are doing with our students. I've had people say, well, does that make you uncomfortable if you are going to begin to have complaints or people making claims? Well, no, it doesn't, because if we have claims on a program, we're not doing what we should be doing for that business and industry, and we need to redirect ourselves. So we believe that we should stand behind what we say. Sir, that completes my report for today.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions for Chancellor Tidings? I actually have one. I was just curious that the warranty program is really interesting, and it received a lot of good attention, I think, during the governor's budget conference. Is that a model that's been replicated somewhere else, or is that?
Yes, sir. I brought that with me, but I hate to give credit where
it's due. Can you share a little bit about what your experience was like implementing that program before?
Actually, during the 14 years that I was president of Athens Technical College, I had one claim.
Wow.
So again, I know that it is incentive for us to make sure that our curriculum is on target and that business and industry see that as the gold seal of approval, but very seldom do they have to come back to us and say that you are not doing the job that you should be doing.
Can you deny a claim?
No, we will not deny.
I got straight D's and I got through your place.
Now, I will say that we do not warranty work ethic. Y'all have all heard me say that. Their behavior's on them. All we are going to warranty is their technical skills, and that we stand behind.
That is fantastic. Thank you so much. Any questions? Thank you. Dr. DiPietro.
Thanks, Chairman Cope, members of the commission. I'm pleased to be here today. To begin with, we're ready for that stress test. I think we'll pass.
Yep.
I was
from the
going to
standpoint
steal
of
the term
budgetarily.
budget advisory group, but I heard it was taken.
So, we're 3 years into that process, and, as one of our board members, that for some time now we've been looking at the business model and trying to figure out how to keep it sustainable. And the reality is, sooner or later, we're going to have challenges from the standpoint of the state's economy. I'm not wishing on any of us, but the reality is I've been around these institutions long enough that it cycles back. So we've been prepping for a while, and we'd be happy to join in that exercise. In fact, I don't think you have to even put us on the treadmill. I'm excited about our enrollment growth as well as what Chancellor Tidings has mentioned, particularly at Martin, where Chancellor Carver and his predecessor from the standpoint of interim Chancellor Bob Smith have really worked hard to put in place a fix to their enrollment management. And it came shining through this year. Their freshman enrollment's up 11%. And you remember I've told you about the fact that at Martin we've had problems with maintaining enrollment for 4 or 5 years with them 3% down or so on an average basis. So that makes this thing about a 14% swing if you look at the full delta. And their transfer students are up too at 13%, at the upper division. At Chattanooga, they saw a 16% increase in transfer students this year, and we think this ties directly to the promise. Those two institutions have worked really hard with the local community colleges to encourage students to transfer into their places. And I think if you look overall, we're up 1.5% or maybe 2% in enrollment total across the entire system. And in this environment, with the capacity we have collectively across the United States, if you took a look at the future, one of the things that's worrisome to us is two issues around enrollment management collectively. One is there are going to be fewer high school graduates over the next 4 to 5 to 6 years. In fact, I think as we get toward 2028, it's a long way away, I guess, maybe not. You could see a 4 or 5% percentage decrease in graduates emerging from high school, and 6% is estimated in Tennessee sometime within the next decade. So that puts a stressor on you because you have plenty of capacity, and you've got fewer people emerging from high schools. The promise should be helpful along the way to thrust people into these programs that financially might not be able to afford it. And then the other confounder is, our graduation rates continue to improve. And if you improve your graduation rate and you have greater throughput, then you need to enroll greater numbers of students as freshmen to maintain the same enrollment because you have more people emerging. We too exceeded the master plan from the standpoint of the Drive to 55 by about 100 graduates this past year. So we've done our part. I'd like to update you on a few leadership changes. I think the last 2 or 3 board meetings I've told you I felt at times like I was an employment agent for the last year or so. Our Vice President for Academic Affairs and Student Success, Linda Miller, has officially joined us. Linda, please stand up. She's over here in the corner. She joined us earlier this month. She was on the job, I think, a day and a half, and we had our first board meeting, and she chaired her first committee. So she's been tested under fire. She comes from Ohio State, where she was director of the second-year Transformational Experience Program, and we certainly are happy she's here. I've known her quite some time. She's very, very talented. We couldn't have done any better from the standpoint of a quality of person, and she'll be working closely with you, Mike, and your team here at THEC, without a doubt, just like Katie High did. As far as our Vice President for Research and Outreach and Economic Development, David Milhorn, who was in that role, and he certainly did a great job, has transitioned to a Senior Vice President Emeritus and for National Lab Relations. And we've appointed Stacy Patterson. She was confirmed by our board this month. Stacy's been with us 5 or 6 years. She's been integral in the growth of our research enterprise, and in this past fiscal year, our system had a record $481 million in research and sponsored program expenditures, and she has a large amount to do with that. Our Vice President for Human Resources is leaving us in December, Linda Herrig, and we'll begin a search for that person pretty quickly. And then out of the independent commission that I named to advise us about Title IX and Title IX programming, there was a recommendation to put in place a system-wide Title IX coordinator. Not only have we started that search and started to interview candidates, but we also put in place an interim Title IX coordinator at the system level, Ashley Blamey, who also holds that role at the Knoxville campus. Recall that as this was a result of our recommendation, my recommendation, that within the settlement of the suit that we name this commission, and our whole attempt is to be the very best in class in dealing with sexual assault and relationship violence on all of our campuses. So while this person will definitely be a compliance person to make sure all the campuses are taking care of business, so to speak, they also, more importantly, will be sharing best practices. And I think that's key because prevention and education is very, very important, as well as response to these situations. As far as a few of the notorieties we've received across the system, some quick hitters. At Knoxville, we recently had 3 students from there who received the Junior Nobel Prize. It's an undergraduate award. It's the world's largest international academic awards program. It recognizes excellence in research and work across the sciences, humanities, business, and creative arts. The 3 students were in Dublin, Ireland last week to attend the Global Summit. And I had lunch with them, and they were incredibly excited about going. They were leaving the next day. At Chattanooga, the Bachelor of Science of Nursing was named the best in Tennessee according to registerednurse.org. The website examined nursing programs in 41 schools across the state and then ranked the top 20. So we're very happy about that. Martin was ranked first among the 19 best online colleges in Tennessee for 17 by College Choice. And other recent rankings they received at Martin Online include the 36th nationally and top ranked in Tennessee by U.S. News and World Report in that effort. And their MBA program ranked 16th, and their for affordability, and 17th nationally for Masters in Education with a major in counseling degrees at Martin. So Martin is starting to hit on all cylinders without a doubt. It has a lot of great potential. At the Health Science Center, they recently hosted a meeting on addiction with the Addiction Medicine Foundation. If you read the Tennessean this morning, you saw an article about Dr. Stern. He has great personal passion in dealing with the opioid addiction as a result of the death of his son from an overdose. He's at the helm of trying to advance a program that would develop fellowships and programs for physicians, particularly general practice type physicians or family practice individuals, to deal with this epidemic, because as he put it, I think in the paper, the docs aren't always trained to do this in the best way. So we've noticed that you have it under the special initiatives of this body. We think this is a great program. Obviously, it's a $2 billion cost from the standpoint of what happens in Tennessee. We'd like to do our part. Memphis is already doing their part in this role. Those funds would be very helpful to us. Lastly, 2 of our campuses could have received considerable savings, significant savings, if they had elected to outsource. At our board meeting last week, I think it was last week, wasn't it? Both those chancellors, the board had indicated that the chancellors would be making these decisions. It indicated despite the savings, they wanted to maintain their facilities people in-house. We will definitely, as a result of a recommendation of our board, achieve the same cost savings at those campuses that had those savings, but managing it themselves. With that, Mr. Chairman, it concludes my report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Mayor Warden.
Title IX is not my area of the law. Your coordinator, is that for students only or in the staff coverage?
It includes both, because some people are mandatory reporters and don't know it, Mr. Mayor. So it's faculty, staff, and students. The biggest thrust is around students, obviously.
Dr. DiPietro, what do you attribute the great success at UT Martin to? You've got new leadership there. I think you were talking about
a guy who will rappel down the side of a building without a helmet on. I called him on Monday after I saw that.
Live tweet it.
Yeah, Director Krause has probably done that when he was in the Army. But
So I had to pay for college.
No, I think a couple of things. There's new spring in their step out at Martin. I get to campuses frequently, and leadership has a lot to do with it. Chancellor Carver's done a really good job of, over the summertime, getting out there in the local communities, getting into high schools and selling the programs to high school students and their families. In many ways, people were sitting on the fence, and he helped close the deal. Dr. Smith did a great job as an interim chancellor of putting in an effective office. And I think leadership has a lot to do with where they're at right now.
Did they also do the interstate tuition, in-state tuition for the states nearby?
What they did is a hybrid model. It actually happened on Bob Smith's watch. He went and looked at the bordering states, looked at their tuition in-state, and then set a number for those states that's a hybrid between in-state and what they would pay out-of-state.
Okay.
So it'd be equivalent to it'd be equivalent to their in-state tuition in Kentucky, for example, if they want to come to Martin. But part of the package was you had to live on campus, you had to live in a dorm, and you had to get a meal plan because those are important too as part of the package.
Questions for Dr. DiPietro? Thank you. Dr. Rudd, on behalf of the locally governed institutions.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. As you know, we are still relatively new in terms of the LGI effort. Our boards are in place and I would argue doing remarkably well. The majority of the LGIs have grown this past year. You have the growth data and the performance data. The goal, I think, behind the LGI movement, a part of the strategy, really was to capitalize on the unique capabilities and capacity of the different institutions. I would argue that that is already happening. I think in future meetings, we'll be able to bring you back some nice examples of how different institutions have done very different things that are consistent with their unique role in the state of Tennessee. And I look forward to sharing those. Many of those efforts are early on currently, and I think we'll have some data to share with you in coming meetings. Overall performance, if you look at the funding formula, all of our institutions are doing well, performing well. And I think consistent with our mission. Interestingly enough, if you look at one of the outcomes of the LGI effort has been, I'd mentioned this to Director Krause. I think we work more together than we ever have now that we're independent, which I find fascinating. We have a major effort underway currently. I can't share it with you today, but we'll share it with you as the new legislative session begins. It's a major collaborative effort across all of our institutions that we are very excited about. I think in an effort to capitalize on our unique capacities, we have also discovered, I think, the importance of collaboration as a part of that. And I look forward in future meetings to being able to bring you examples of how we've done that, what those outcomes are, and how that has facilitated outcomes for the state in general. So I think in these early stages, the LGI effort is off to a very good start. And I think probably with unanticipated success. I think that's a reasonably fair statement. I look forward to sharing with you empirical evidence of that in future meetings. And doing all of that, I think consistent with what you had shared earlier, at historically low tuition rate increases. And I think all of us are very conscious of the issue of access and affordability is a part of the mission here in Tennessee. The one thing I did want to share, I think that is important to mention, is in the last session we received some limited funding on campus safety. There was some discussion about campus safety funding continuing over the course of the next few years. We have partially implemented procedures as a result of that funding with the hope that there would be some limited continued funding in future cycles. So we think that's critical and important. As you know, nationally, there is remarkable evidence of the importance of safety on campus for all of us.
I'd just add to that, Chairman Cope, that is actually part of the special initiatives budget request that you all will see before you today, Commission members. It's actually listed under TBR, Safety and Security, but that funding actually still covers the 6 LGIs. We funded $1.9 million last year, primarily for the purposes of hardening classrooms to ensure that during a mass shooting event, the classroom cannot be entered. And my understanding is, Chancellor, with this $2 million of additional funding, we'll be able to finish out the package, including the LGIs.
Yeah.
So this is the second of a third year ask. We have one more year after this one to finish it.
Dr. Nolan, did you have anything you wanted to add? Thank you, Dr. Rudd.
And I did want to say, in closing, a number of people have asked me about the University of Memphis football program this year. I did want to go on record as saying our coach is remarkably happy where he is, and more than happy to stay where he is. Thank you.
I know where to go from there. But I would like to thank Director Krause for the opportunity to address a public policy issue that impacts East Tennessee State University. As many of you are aware, in 2005, when I was on the staff for Dr. Rhoda, the Commission took consideration on the creation of a College of Pharmacy at East Tennessee State University. At that point in time, there was a recognition that in order for the college to come to fruition, it would need to operate as a self-supporting entity, and it has done so over the course of the past 12 years. Over the course of the past 12 years, it has met the need for pharmacists in rural areas of the state. The bulk of our students are first-generation students. More than a third come from rural zip codes. Of the 310 students enrolled this fall at ETSU, about 40% are in-state. We have about an $11.5 million budget, all of which comes from independent sources. Those sources cover personnel, operations, as well as building, upkeep, and maintenance. But what I'd like to explore, and I recognize that hopefully today is the beginning of a conversation, is the opportunity to revisit that public policy conversation that began in 2005. As you have seen the evolution of our college and other colleges across the state, I think really what this comes down to for us is a question around equity. With some changes that have been made at other institutions in the state of Tennessee, there's the possibility now for non-Tennesseans to attend state-supported institutions at approximately $14,000 less than what a student would have the opportunity, well, about $10,000 less than what a Tennessean would pay to attend ETSU. So as we look at demand for graduate education in the state, what we would like to begin with you is a conversation around that issue of equity, of Tennessee taxpayers having the opportunity to attend a state institution at a price comparable to that at other state institutions. So we'd be happy to address questions or provide you with any future information that you would deem appropriate.
Questions, comments? Open.
And you mentioned demand around the state. What is the demand for pharmacy graduates?
I think the demand in many respects has leveled off. This is not a push on behalf of our university to grow the size of the class. In many respects, this proposal, if it's a conversation we could explore, is revenue neutral. This is not an increase of operating dollars for the university. But I think the demand for us, this is not a demand element, it's more of an affordability element. But I think the demand is being met. Since our College of Pharmacy was created, 44 new colleges have opened across the country. When we opened, Belmont did not have a College of Pharmacy, Lipscomb did not have a College of Pharmacy, South did not have a College of Pharmacy, and the list kind of goes on and on and on.
Have you seen a decline in your enrollment?
No, our enrollments remain constant. We're right around 80 students in every entering class. There's between, on any given year, 500 and 550 students who apply for those slots. So once again, it's not a function of demand. It's not a function of declining enrollment. It's just more a function of looking at the fact that a Tennessean pays $36,000 to go to ETSU, but an Alabama resident would pay $26,000 to go to another public institution in the state.
Is it close to ETSU? The other institution in the state, is it geographically close to you?
There are branches in Knoxville, Nashville, and Memphis.
Mr. Chairman, and to the commission, if it feels right, one, appreciate Dr. Nolan for publicly raising this now. If it pleases the commission, I think what we'd like to do is begin working with ETSU through what this would look like. We have spoken to Dr. Nolan. He knows foremost in our mind will be the 2005 proceedings, in which case the commission had very clearly stated parameters for the pharmacy school's operation, while at the same time, and Dr. Nolan has discussed with us, perhaps financial aid avenues, which really aren't direct state support. So if it is amenable to the chairman, I would just propose our staff will begin working with Dr. Nolan over the next several months to take a look at what the proposal could mean.
I don't have an objection unless anybody has an objection.
I have a comment.
Yes, sir.
So I'd love to work with you too.
Certainly. Would welcome it.
Thanks,
Sure,
Dr.
thank you,
Mellon.
Members of the Board.
Thank
Thank
you very much. The next portion of our agenda, we're moving on to action items, and I'd call on Dr. Stephanie Bellard Chase for item 1. And just so the commission's aware, as you'll note on your agenda, we have 4 items under Roman numeral number 1. What we propose to do, what I propose to do, is to let Dr. Bellard Chase present on all 4 items, and then at the conclusion of her presentation, we'll just vote on all 4 items collectively unless there's an objection. Dr. Bellard Chase.
Thank you, Chairman Cope, Director Kraus, members of the commission. Good morning. As the Chairman Cope noted, I have 4 items for your consideration today. The first one is reauthorization. The Committee on Post-Secondary Educational Institutions has recommended that the institutions listed in 1A be granted reauthorization for the period of January 1st, 2018 through December 31st, 2018 as follows. 31 institutions for regular authorization, which means they've been authorized more than 2 years. 13 institutions for temporary authorization. Temporary is when you're authorized for less than 2 years. And 5 institutions for conditional authorization. I will briefly go over the reasons for conditional. One institution is because of their financials. They don't meet our minimum financial standards, which means their condition is that they will have to submit quarterly financial statements to our division. The next one is a voluntary. Knoxville College is voluntarily on conditional authorization while they go through a transition and try to revitalize. And so during that period, they cannot advertise, enroll, instruct, or recruit any type of students. The next institution is a trucking institution, and their lease right now is month to month. And because of that, because they don't have a stable presence, we're suggesting that they be on conditional, and they will have to keep in touch with us and let us know when they get a permanent location. The other institution is a CNA program, and it has been deactivated by the board that oversees CNAs. So the condition for them is they cannot recruit, enroll, or instruct any students until they've been reactivated by the board. And the last one, this institution has no location at all. So until they get a location, they cannot instruct, recruit, or enroll any students. The next items 2 and 3 are initial authorization and new programs. The two new.
Can I ask a question real quick? I'm so sorry. Yeah, and it may be. Feel free to interrupt, I guess, at any point, since we're going to try to cover all 4. But when it comes to the conditional authorization, if are students who apply to go to school there, are they aware of that? Are they aware of the status of that authorization?
Well, for the 2 institutions that can't do anything, they don't have a website. They don't have anything.
Yeah.
For the one that has a month-to-month lease or the financials, no. Now, if somebody calls and inquires, then we let them know. But it's not. Our statute does not require them to put that anywhere on their website or anything like that. Yes.
First time Knoxville College has been under conditional, or is this a continuing?
No, it's continuing. It's been about 2 or 3 years.
Okay.
We are in contact with them regularly. They have submitted a proposal, but we're waiting on some other items that we asked for. And so once they get to a point where and they're going to do online. They're planning to do online programs instead of. So once we get to a point where we think, okay, they're ready to operate these 1 or 2 programs, we'll present it to the commission first.
Question about the students that are already enrolled in the program. So what happens with those students?
There are no students enrolled at Knoxville College or the other institution.
Okay, thank you.
Most of these, Commissioner Winton, are in a bit of, for lack of a better word, a rehabilitation mode, trying to get back to stasis.
Okay. The next items 2 and 3 are in sections 1B and 1C. There's 2 new institutions for your consideration and 22 new programs. And the committee has recommended that they be granted temporary authorization and approval, respectively. Okay. And then the last item is item 4, optional expedited authorization. These institutions are listed in section 1D, and the recommendation is that they be granted optional expedited authorization. There's 52 of them. I would just like to note that 50 of these are repeat. So for optional expedited authorization, you have to apply each year. So for 50 of these institutions, this is their second time, and there's only 2 institutions on here that is their first time.
Thanks very much. Are there any questions about any of the 4 items that have been presented? And if there are no questions, the chair will entertain a motion to adopt the recommendation of Dr. Beller Chase with respect to all 4.
We'll move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Very good. Any discussion? All in favor signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next, item 2 on your agenda, new academic programs. Betty Dandridge Johnson.
First, I would like to say good morning to everyone. Really would like to expand on what President Rudd has said in terms of different schools doing different things. We already have examples of those, and you were here, 2 new academic programs whereby different schools. Austin Peay State University is proposing to offer an aviation science with a concentration in rotor wing, and the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga is proposing to offer a master's of public health and chronic disease and prevention. And I have these materials are provided in your agenda notebook. It's items 2A and 2B. And for Austin Peay State University, Provost Gandy will be making the presentation on aviation science, which will be followed by Dr. India Lane will do a presentation for the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga. Dr. Gandy.
That's for a motion.
Good morning. I'm proud on behalf of Austin Peay State University to request approval for a new degree. This degree will be housed in our Department of Engineering Technology. It'll be closely tied to our Fort Campbell Center. The classes will be there, and then the flight training will be right across the street from Fort Campbell at Outlaw Field, Montgomery County Airfield. We will seek accreditation for this program. We estimate a starting class this coming fall of about 25, and then we plan to offer 35 students each fall after that. As mentioned, it's a Bachelor of Science in Aviation Science, concentration in rotor wing. That's helicopters, in case you're not familiar with that. We will, of course, they will be getting their bachelor's degree and then various certifications in helicopter flight. Fort Campbell is a center. It's one of the largest concentrations of helicopters in the United States, over 400 on site there. A lot of the veterans coming out of there have experience with helicopters, so we think this will be a very good opportunity for them to go out and make a very good career. The Bureau of Labor Statistics indicates that this is a growing field for employment, and we feel these graduates will be well educated and very capable pilots and very employable. I'll be glad to answer any questions. Yes, sir.
Dr. Yandy, just help me understand, this is a pretty highly specialized niche type of program, and I recognize there's a lot of helicopter usage in that area. A couple of questions. One is you're projecting a pipeline of 25 to 45 over the coming years. Is that coming from the local area specifically? How do you come up with those numbers in terms of a pipeline? That's the first question.
First of all, we've been working on this program a couple of years. There's a lot of work getting it in place. So we've been contacted by many people interested in this degree. A lot of vets that come off of Fort Campbell. Tremendous amount of interest. So just the part of besides the Bureau of Labor Statistics, it's just direct inquiries we've got. And based on that, we feel that roughly when we level off around 100 plus, slightly over 100 would be the demand.
And then tell me a little bit about the feeder. So once they've come through the program, where do you project them feeding into? Is it Is there a high demand in that local area, or is this more of a statewide demand?
There is demand in the local area, but probably at some point that was saturated and they would move out. But you know, in medical, flight, corporate, agricultural, surveying, there's a lot of areas where helicopter pilots are used in. So wildlife studies, for instance.
Mayor Wharton.
I see you're going to lease the aircraft, and eventually you'll have 14 flight instructors and 2 support staff. But that's by the 5th year. How do you handle aircraft? What do you have?
Yeah, we'll just go on the job market and look for instructors. We have an ad out right now for a director of the program, and there's a lot of people in the area of Fort Campbell that have all these certifications and could serve as instructors.
Dr. Gandy, the 10% increase in the Bureau of Labor Statistics indicates that's for all pilots, fixed wing pilots as well.
Yes,
What portion of that do you think applies to helicopter pilots?
They didn't break that out. We think it's probably roughly equivalent.
10% for both types.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
No concern that
Well, a lot of the drone work, you know, obviously the load capacity a drone can carry is very different than a helicopter. So we see growth in the drone area too, but we also see that not really hurting the helicopter.
Commissioner Willard.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Gandy, for your good presentation. I just wanted to point out, and you probably already know this, that as you know, MTSU has a flight school itself and everything does fixed wing aircraft primarily and all. But I just want to point out, Department of Treasury does risk management for the state, and we do the risk management for MTSU and their program down there. And the Board of Claims has standards about aircraft that are owned or leased or used by state facilities, including higher ed. And so we'll need to coordinate about that because it requires that hull coverage and also some liability coverage be obtained by the institution who's maintaining those particular aircraft and all that, because the claims fund of the state, you know, is only intended to cover basic liability needs like auto and things like that and so on and so forth. So it's not intended to cover this type of use. So
yes, sir. We're well aware of that, and we're
Okay.
going to begin negotiations
Okay.
with you on that.
All right. Very good. Thank you.
Other questions? Hearing none, we're actually going to take these items one at a time. So at this point on item 2A, the chair will entertain a motion. All right, we have a motion to approve the program. Mayor Wharton, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, second, Treasurer Lillard. Any discussion?
Can I offer maybe just a slight amendment? I know that typically we do a sort of a 3-year review of programs. In this situation, it seems like it's so unique. Can we do a more frequent or maybe a review after 12 months of how this program is progressing?
Commissioner Stafford, yes, and I'll put more detail around that. In fact, what we would typically receive in a given year is we would receive who's hit what benchmarks. It's a proper motion for the commission just to request an enhanced level of reporting that would require maybe a narrative, and depending on what that narrative and the benchmarks combined showed, a site visit as kind of a, if we needed to go to that stage, it's a proper motion and we'd be happy to carry it out.
So we have a motion to amend the motion. Is there a second on the motion to amend?
Second.
All right, we're going to vote on the motion to amend. Any discussion on the motion to amend? Hearing none, all in favor signify so by saying aye. Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Now, next item on the agenda is the motion from Mayor Wharton as amended by Commissioner Stafford, and we'll need a second for that. Actually, we already have a second on that. So if there's any discussion on that, hearing none, all in favor signify so by saying aye. Are there any opposed? Motion carries. All right, next, Betty, I think we have a presentation from UT Chattanooga. Is that right? Sorry. Okay.
Good morning. Good morning, and thank you for allowing us to join you today on behalf of the University of Tennessee System and the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga. I'm happy to present the proposed Master's of Degree in Public Health with a focus on chronic disease prevention and control. I'm stepping in today for Provost Gerald Ainsworth, who has a conflict this week with an accreditation visit. This program has generated a lot of excitement around the Chattanooga region and in Tennessee and the tri-state area. Chronic disease such as diabetes, hypertension, and cardiovascular disease is very prevalent in our area and our state and is influenced by eating habits and physical activity. This program has an emphasis on those elements of public health in a population sense. There are only 7 other similarly focused MPH programs in the country. None of those are in the Chattanooga area or region. The program also is a wonderful fit for UT Chattanooga because it complements their existing Healthy Living initiative, and it fits perfectly with their overarching mission to be an engaged metropolitan university. As I mentioned, the emphasis here is on population health. Public health focuses on the community of the population, not the individual. The chronic diseases are related to how that community views eating habits and physical activity. This professional program will train graduates to go out and serve in public and private agencies that are dedicated to the health of our populations and communities. UT Chattanooga has recruited Dr. Mark Stoutenberg and his wife, I might mention, both MPH degree holders from the University of Miami. Dr. Stoutenberg will serve as the coordinator of the Healthy Living Initiative and as the program coordinator for the MPH. These students are professional graduate students. They will be admitted each term to increase the flexibility for students coming in and to meet demand. The program anticipates admitting about 20 students per year and graduating hopefully about 20 students per year. It's marketed to adults and working adults and professionals, and it will be marketed predominantly in the tri-state region there around Chattanooga, as well as Kentucky, Louisiana, and Mississippi. A program of this type for working adults must use multiple delivery methods to be flexible and to meet the students' needs. So it will use hybrid online and face-to-face offerings for both full-time and part-time students. The program, the curriculum, has been designed to meet the accreditation standards and to meet competencies designed both by the accrediting body and by the college. That accreditation process, if all goes well, is expected to begin this coming summer, next summer, and it's a 3-year process, so full accreditation is expected by 2021. The program is presented to you today with the full support of the UT Chattanooga campus, the president of the University of Tennessee, and the UT Board of Trustees. After a very long development process, we're very happy to bring this program to the commission today for approval. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Move approval.
Motion for approval. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. Any discussion? All in favor signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. All right, next, item number 3, off-campus instruction. Amanda Claffin.
Good morning, Chairman Cope, Director Krause, members of the Commission. I'm here to update or to present on the action item related to off-campus instruction. So as many of you recall, this past July, 2 new off-campus instruction policies were approved. This was a revision to a policy dating back to 2007 that split off-campus instruction into 2 unique policies, one specific to community colleges and universities, and the second is specific to our colleges of applied technology. This presentation, this action item, is specific to the community college and university policy. So there are three real things that I want to mention or remind the Commission about. One, the statutory authority that Tennessee Higher Education Commission has to approve and disapprove all off-campus locations at our public institutions across the state. Two, our definition of an off-campus center. So there are three prongs to this. An off-campus center is one that is geographically separate from the main campus of an institution, offers at least one complete academic program, and has a form of administrative presence on site. And then finally, in the new policy, we return to elevating commission or center approval to the commission, which is why we're here today talking about this specific update. Upon approval of those two policies back in July, what we did was we sent out our existing off-campus location inventories to the systems and institutions for a close review. This also included a look to see if any existing off-campus locations were currently in use. If not, we were going to deactivate them. And second, to determine if any of these off-campus locations were offering those complete programs fitting that criteria of what I just described as an off-campus center. And what we learned in that process was that the locations listed in front of you do in fact meet that criteria of offering a complete academic, at least one complete academic program, having a form of administrative presence, and are geographically apart from the main campus. So what I wanted to do was talk through what we are looking at moving forward with this policy. So I think we have really a four-prong approach for how we're going to continue to monitor and review these locations. As you'll recall in the policy, we have a 3-year review process, but we don't want to just put this aside for 3 years and then come back to it. We want to continuously keep up on what these locations are doing to avoid any kind of creep between centers and sites. So the first is related to transparency. What we'll be doing is putting on our website, in fact, we already have some information up there, contact information for all of our off-campus liaisons to encourage collaboration amongst our institutions around these off-campus offerings. Second, a listing of our inventory. So now available to the public, we'll have a map denoting all of these off-campus centers so that folks can take a look and see what's going on in their communities. Second is related to our academic program inventories, which I'm sure many of you are aware of or familiar with, but to give you a brief overview, lists each of the academic programs active at an institution. What we're going to be including now is an off-campus location code on those documents. These documents are sent out frequently to institutions, more often several times a year, and so we're going to keep that prevalent in everyone's minds. This is an off-campus location code. You're saying this program is offered at this location to keep that conversation moving. Third, in our fact book, each year we annually report on the headcount and full-time enrollment at our off-campus centers and all of our off-campus locations. And so we're going to continuously receive data from our institutions and systems, and when we see gaps in that data or the fact that there are no enrollments, that will kind of pique a conversation between us and that institution, but also be used in that 3-year review process. If there are no enrollments over several years, should we be deactivating that location? And finally, which I think is maybe most important, but also a little less tangible, are the relationships that I think we've developed throughout this process. We've been in really consistent communication with our institutions and systems. That's where this list of off-campus liaisons was derived from. And so I think these 4 things are going to be real assets for us in terms of continuously monitoring and reviewing the existence of our off-campus locations. So all that to say that it's really important for us as an agency to have kind of a pulse on what sort of off-campus offerings there are across the state. And we really want to just continuously encourage kind of awareness, transparency, and collaboration amongst our institutions on this front. So with that, I welcome any questions and recommend this action item for approval.
And Mr. Chairman, I want to thank Amanda and Betty Danger-Johnson, who've kind of been living this for the last several months. I'll just tell you, it comes in response to, of the inquiries we receive from the General Assembly, one of the most frequent is who's doing what where, for a lot of different reasons. It's a fair question to ask, and especially as we move into the post-focus era, we thought it was a very well and good thing to do to first establish a baseline of who's doing what where, which I think the most important thing to come out of that, to Amanda's point, is the relationships. We have some situational awareness we did not have 8 months ago, and we'll continue those conversations moving forward. I also think that if you take an opportunity to read about specifically our community colleges and where they're being pushed out to, and the empire of Motlow State Community College in Roane State, they've really been pushed to do that, though. Many of these are dual enrollment sites that then can feed into a center where you could attend a full academic program. So Thankful for the diligent work by our staff. I think this gives us a basic understanding of what the state of higher education geographically is.
Thanks very much. Any questions for Amanda?
Signs off. Site that we want. Site that they want.
Are you talking about physical facilities?
Physical.
So I think that would, so as it relates to accrediting agencies, they're really involved as it relates to kind of the elevated location. So I can't speak, so our sites, I'll give you kind of a, I guess, a run through, because there's some off-campus instructional sites that are strictly one dual enrollment class, maybe situated in a high school. Like, that would be different than some of these centers, which I'll defer to our fiscal team to speak about some of that facilities piece of that, but I do know that that's an important, like, for the health and well-being of students.
In the past, we had situations where folks had underground storage tanks and all that.
I'd let Stephen Gentile from our fiscal team to
Somebody,
get into some of the plant
I don't
issues.
want to detail this on to somebody. See, this more detail.
Go for another hour on this. Good morning. We rely on the governing boards, and also the State Building Commission plays a role in that as well, in that process.
Thanks, Mayor Warden. Any other questions for Amanda? If not, we'll entertain a motion. I have a motion to adopt the recommendation. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. Any discussion? All in favor signify so by saying aye. Are there
Aye.
any opposed? Motion carries. Thanks very much. All right, next, item number 4, University of Tennessee Lone Oaks Farm Master Plan. Taylor Odell.
Thank you, Chairman Cope, Director Kraus, and members of the Commission. I want to do a brief overview and introduction of our next item for consideration and approval, which is the University of Tennessee Lone Oaks Farm Master Plan. And this will be the first master plan for the farm that the Commission considers and approves. This is a 1,200-acre farm located in Middleton, Tennessee, just outside of Jackson. It was purchased by the state in 2015 and is administratively housed by UT Extension, a unit of the University of Tennessee Institute for Agriculture. And this master plan that will be reviewed today focuses on expanding and enhancing the farm's operations in 4-H camp activities, youth development programs, and STEM education. THEC Fiscal Policy and Capital Planning staff visited the site to review the master plan in October of this year. And I want to recognize Dean Robert Burns of UT Extension and thank him for being here today. And go ahead and introduce to you Dr. Ben West, the director of Lone Oaks Farm, for the presentation.
Well, good morning. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. Dr. Burns and I are excited to be here and walk you through the facility and master plan for Lone Oaks Farm. As was mentioned, this property was acquired in December of 2015, principally because our facility in Milan, Tennessee, a 4-H center that had existed since the 60s, was closed and sold, and we needed plans for a new center in West Tennessee. This center and the other 3 centers across the state serve a very robust 4-H program. We have about 180,000 4th through 12th grade 4-H members across the state, and several thousand of them attend 4-H camp every summer. And so with the closure of Milan, we were in need of a new 4-H center to serve the West Tennessee region. Right after the closure of Milan, one of the things that we did was a pretty intense scoping process where we looked at lots of other 4-H centers all across the country. And one of the most important things that we learned is that state-of-the-art successful 4-H centers actually do much more than 4-H. They're very diversified in their programs, both from that's important from a revenue standpoint and a visibility standpoint. So one of the things we decided early on is to build a new successful 4-H center in West Tennessee. The model was very clear. It had to be more than just a 4-H center. It had to offer youth education and development programs that are traditional 4-H programs, but also other things for youth K through 12 that don't fall under the umbrella of 4-H, as well as hospitality programs, things like corporate retreats and meetings and conferences, family reunions, weddings, all those kinds of things are important to drive revenue. They're also important to generate visibility, and they also are conducive and are consistent with our educational mission. So, developing a master plan for this facility, we wanted a plan that would incorporate and support both of these initiatives, and all within the context of a working farm. Lone Oaks Farm is a 1,200-acre working farm. The fact that it is a working farm is very important to us because it helps us serve our mission of connecting people to agriculture and natural resources and the outdoors. So whether it's a youth group coming to the farm or a corporate retreat coming to the farm is the backdrop, and that's really important to us. But the reason that Lone Oaks Farm exists is to serve our youth education mission. So if you look at the master plan, and it is fairly extensive, you'll find that you'll find lots of detail. I want to focus on our youth education mission. Obviously, Lone Oaks Farm will become a home for 4-H summer camp, where we anticipate hosting upwards of 1,500 4th through 12th graders for summer 4-H camp. But it's also a place where we will conduct a number of other educational programs throughout the school year in partnership with public schools, private schools, and homeschool associations in 3 primary areas. First is STEM education, preparing kids and exciting kids about entry into STEM fields of study and careers. Secondly, getting kids outdoors and active, and hopefully encouraging them to adopt healthy outdoor-oriented lifestyles to combat the health problems that are arising from indoor sedentary lifestyles. And then lastly, help them to begin developing some leadership skills, to, for at least a few hours at the farm, get their heads out of their cell phone and begin talking to each other and being part of a team and developing communication skills. We believe the opportunity to serve a very large number of kids in this program is significant. We believe once fully mature, we can be serving 30,000 or more K through 12 students every year through these programs. And obviously, we believe this could be a significant benefit to the Drive to 55 initiative. Many of the K through 12 students that step foot on the farm for these programs, they will be having their first connection to an institute of higher education, and hopefully a period of inquiry about what their lives could become. These programs will happen at a pretty amazing facility. Those of you who have been to the farm will attest that it is an amazing piece of property, a beautiful piece of property with woodlands and open pasture and lakes like this one. It's a perfect tapestry for getting kids to the farm and outdoors and experiencing science and technology and engineering and math in very hands-on ways. It is located in Middleton, Tennessee. When you're at the farm, you feel like you're in the middle of nowhere, but you're actually just about an hour and 15 minutes to downtown Memphis, about 45 minutes to Jackson. So within a 75-mile radius, about an hour and a half drive, there's 430,000 K through 12 students, and we believe that we can service a great number of them every year through our program. So it's a large number of potential students we would be servicing, and it's a very diverse population, racially, ethnically, and socioeconomically, and we're excited about working with students in all parts of that. Because of the complexity of the project, of the property, because of the potential impact, we thought it wise before we started construction and started developing the property further to develop a strategic facility master plan to help us think through very carefully how best to take advantage of this resource. So we conducted a national RFP, ended up hiring a landscape architecture firm, Nelson Bird & Woltz, from Charlottesville, Virginia, to lead the master planning process. They teamed up with El Dorado from Kansas City, which was just named the 16th best architectural firm in the country, and Whitaker & Associates from Chattanooga to lead and develop this master plan process for us. It was a great process from our perspective. The designers were very collaborative, very professional, very responsive, and have developed what we think is an exceptional facility campus master plan. This shows the farm from 30,000 feet, and the master plan basically calls for carving the farm up into three pieces. One part of the farm for hospitality, adult-oriented activities like corporate retreats and conferences and those kind of things. Part for agricultural production, and a part for youth education. Again, because of our time constraints today, I'm going to focus on youth education, but the complete master plan is available for your review, and obviously we'll answer any questions you may have about it. But the youth education component of Lone Oaks Farm is represents about a $45 million investment. It consists of significant educational and recreational assets and amenities, overnight lodging for about 200 students, plus additional space for counselors and leaders. All of the things administratively that you need to run a facility like this, like a dining hall, administrative spaces, staff cabins, etc. And then obviously many outdoor teaching spaces to be able to connect kids with the outdoors and with agriculture and with nature. This campus we envision being developed in three phases. Phase one is about a $13 million investment, which is really focused on facilities to help us deliver STEM education programs. It features a STEM education center with indoor and outdoor educational spaces, and the first group of cabins that would have overnight lodging for 65 or 70 kids. The second group, the second phase would really focus on facilities that would help us deliver outdoor programs and health and wellness programs. That would include facilities like the dining hall, the recreation center, and another group of cabins, and various outdoor recreational amenities. And then lastly, the last piece would focus on leadership development, which would include the last group of cabins, and then outdoor oriented activities and amenities to help us stimulate thoughts about leadership development. I'll close with this. This is simply a rendering of what the entry into Lone Oaks Farm will look like. The first thing that groups will see as they come in will be the STEM Education Center, and that center particularly is the area we expect to be serving 30,000 kids or so a year once we're fully mature. So with that, thank you for your time, and we'll try to answer any questions.
Assuming approval of the plan, what's your plan for funding this going forward?
We're committed to raising the money for development through private and corporate and foundation gifts, and don't anticipate seeking state support.
I noticed on the map how close Middleton is to Mississippi, and I saw your radiuses there. Are you going to only direct your programs at Tennessee youth, or will you be looking at students outside of Tennessee?
No, ma'am. We will absolutely be looking at students outside of Tennessee. We just kicked off our STEM education program about 2 months ago. We have a director of STEM education that's actually funded completely by the local school system in Hardeman County, but it's serving not just Hardeman County. We've just gotten an inquiry from Olive Branch, Mississippi, from an elementary school to come to the farm.
Mayor Ward.
Folks, wait, go back.
Absolutely, and that's, I said, we want to service our 4-H programs well, but we want to provide youth education for lots of things that don't fall under the 4-H program. So absolutely, FFA, all of those STEM education programs will not be conducted through our traditional 4-H program. They'll be conducted through direct partnership with schools, public, private, and homeschool associations.
A little bit of an overview of what staffing looks like to run a facility like this.
Yes, ma'am.
Is it going to be dedicated staffing for this site, or will you be utilizing expertise from other organizations?
Well, obviously, Lone Oaks Farm is part of UT Extension, which is an 800 to 1,000 person workforce. Many of those employees will be helping us from an expertise standpoint here. But in terms of just personnel, right now we have a team of about 12 people at the farm. We expect that to grow pretty quickly over the next 5 to 10 years. Full staffing is probably in the 50 to 60 person range once we're fully mature, and that's several years away.
Probably, Chairman, just a good administrative note to remind the Commission of those that this facility is ultimately under the oversight of Chancellor Cross as an Institute of Ag facility. Is that right?
Director Krause, it certainly is. And, you know, Dr. West, why don't you tell them about the current relationship with Nubbin and the schools nearby?
Yeah, so I alluded to this fact that our STEM education, director of STEM education position is funded by the local school system. Early on, we were able to develop a relationship with their superintendent, Warner Ross. Everyone calls him Nubbin because when he was born, he was premature and he was severely jaundiced. So he was a 4-pound baby and he was bright yellow. Nubbin is a term for a stunted ear of corn. So his grandfather walks in when he's 30 minutes old and says, well, he's nothing but a little nubbin. And he was a second team all SEC lineman at Ole Miss. So he grew a little bit. But Nubbin, incredibly visionary, said, you know, we want to change the trajectory of K through 12 education in Hardeman County. We see a partnership with the University of Tennessee at Lone Oaks Farm as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to do that. And so by funding this position and offering, you know, not just Hardeman County classes, but classes throughout the region, the opportunity to come to the farm and see how STEM plays out in real life, he thinks is a game changer in K through 12 education and ultimately for higher education, because ultimately we want to increase the pipeline of those kids that come to the farm to let them see opportunities in life they maybe would not see otherwise, and will enter one of our institutions of higher education.
Well done. You know, I think I would add that I just attended a national meeting in Washington, D.C. of about 5,000 people from major universities, and I was in a meeting there in which people were worried about not having enough people, not young people, interested in STEM disciplines. And the whole key is getting to them very early and making them realize that science, technology, engineering, mathematics can be fun, and they can be interested and they can achieve in those areas. This place will help us do that in Tennessee. Lastly, I would tell you I have the notoriety of being the person who closed Milan. I promised the area of the state that we would figure out how to bring another 4-H center back online. We think this will be a world-class facility eventually, and the people of West Tennessee appreciate the support of the governor, the General Assembly, and this body and others who made it happen a couple of sessions ago.
Fantastic.
Oh, Milan. So the Milan facility was barracks. They had renovated barracks that were part of the arsenal at Milan. And actually part of the problem there that they got into trouble was the buildings were very old and they were not status of the art. In fact, the first time I visited the place, I'll never forget it because I thought we really keep people here. And the other part of it was it wasn't conducive to the off-season business you have to make the best 4-H centers. Nobody wanted to have a wedding in Milan, trust me. Nobody wanted to bring a corporate group there to have a series of meetings. Nobody wanted to bring a church retreat there. And this facility will do that without a doubt. In fact, most people, and I actually think Director Krause just wanted to get out to Lone Oaks. He went out there and saw it. When they see it, they're wowed. Without a doubt, it's an incredible facility.
Other questions? It does look fantastic. With that, I'll entertain a motion to approve the master plan.
So moved.
Motion, is there a second? Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify so by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, it is 11:22. We will take a 15-minute break for bathroom and to get your lunch. We're going to do what we normally do, which is get your lunch, bring it back, and I guess around 11:45, 11:50, we'll start back. Thanks.
Chairman, if I could just to kind of frame up, we have a microphone and we have 2 mics on. Takasha, for some reason yours is on. I'm good now? Okay. Just to frame up what the commission will hear over the next, and we hope you'll notice we have moved fast and our agenda is lean because our hope was to really be able to dig in and have the appropriate amount of discussion and deliberation over the next several agenda items. Every year we bring a package to you that includes the funding formula, tuition, and capital. I'm particularly proud of the tuition recommendation. This is a discussion that we have had in conjunction with the systems and the LGIs. What I will say that the work that Jason Cavender and Stephen Gentile has led this year that we're excited about is our starting point for the tuition recommendation was students. And looking at what a tuition burden around a kitchen table looks like. I'll also say, and the budget advisory group at UT is a great example of this. That's the same starting point you all used. Thinking about what affordability looks like in Tennessee. And so I'll tell you, when we presented this as a proposal last week to the governor, is positively received. The funding formula data you're going to hear today tells some really powerful stories as well about institutions that have really doubled down on producing great outcomes, which when that happens, that means more students progressing. And so I want to thank our fiscal team that have been living and breathing this now for about 4 months, and really look forward to the presentation.
Thank you, Director Krause, Chairman Cope, members of the commission. Good afternoon. I think we're actually still good morning if you guys are enjoying your lunch. I will take longer than 20 seconds on this part of the presentation. To give you an idea about where we are going over the next 3 action items, we will be covering state appropriation recommendation. This will go into our outcomes-based funding formula and the associated request of $55 million there. Our non-formal units, think our agricultural centers, hospitals, medical schools, that will be covered by Crystal Collins and in depth, and talk to you about all of the outcomes, changes, and what went into that request. And then we're going to buttress that with our tuition guidance recommendation, which has already been talked to you all a little bit. We'll go into the details on how we landed on our 0 to 3% increase. And then we will cover capital outlay and capital maintenance recommendation. This year, under new policy approved by this body, we engaged with a new policy, capital policy recommendation process. I will talk you through that and tell you where the staff has landed with our recommendation. I do want to take a moment of personal privilege here to thank the systems and the institutions. The 3 of us have been working, specifically Crystal and Taylor, on this, like we said, for 4 months. But there are countless staff at TBR, UT, all the LGIs who get a lot of emails from us to make all of this possible. So thank you, and thank you to a lot of them who are here and to those who are watching at home. That said, Crystal Collins, can you please come up?
Thank you, Stephen. Good late morning. We were joking, since we're a little ahead of schedule, I didn't know what would be better to be before lunch or after lunch. So I think during lunch is probably the way to go. So, what we're going to talk about, what I'm going to talk about this morning, is the 2018-19 state appropriation recommendations. And as Stephen mentioned, we're very grateful to our systems and our institutions for all of the help and hand-holding that they have provided over the last 4 or 5 months. This process, as we've grown and changed at THEC, and as our systems have grown and changed, has become a more iterative process where we have to work in very tight partnerships in order to bring this to you today. So I'm very thankful for the assistance that we've gotten. The item that I'm going to discuss today is item 5 in your notebook. With that, we will begin. We're coming to you today with a overall recommendation for our formula units, which those include our Tennessee Colleges of Applied Technology, our community colleges, and our universities. So an aggregated recommendation based on performance for these institutions of $55 million. This is coupled with a 0 to 3% tuition recommendation, which Taylor Odell will talk about in the next action item more in depth. And as Director Krause mentioned, is rooted in not only the Drive to 55, so our completion metrics, but also in a look at affordability for our students and families. This $55 million represents a 5.4% increase over our 17-18 funding levels. And it continues the process of moving or improving affordability for our students and their families. $55 million isn't going to fill the whole gap that is required by our institutions to continue to service the students they have, but it's going to get us much closer and will probably reduce the amount that they'll have to rely on tuition and allow them to focus even more so on finding efficiencies at their institutions. Coupled with this $55 million, one of the other recommendations you have in front of you today is $20.5 million for the TSAA. And for those of you who aren't familiar, this is our Tennessee Student Assistance Award. This is our state-based need program for our neediest students in Tennessee. As I'm sure you're all aware, we have a large proportion of low-income students who attend our colleges and universities. And because of that, we run out of money before we can service all students who are even eligible for this award. This $20.5 million is made up of two pieces. $6.8 million is sort of an accounting transfer. During the recession, the last big recession in the mid-aughts, we used lottery funds to sort of bolster the TSAA because we didn't have state funds that we could invest in that, and the number of students who were eligible for the award increased. What we're asking the state to do this year is to transfer that fund away from lottery into state appropriations. So that's what that $6.8 million is. So that would make that $6.8 million whole in state appropriations. The second part of the request is $13.7 million, and this is new state funding. So this would be new funding added to the $80 to $90 million that is already a part of the TSAA program. And this $13.7 million will service about 7,600 additional students. We still have so 13 to 14,000 students who are eligible that aren't receiving the award. So this will help get us closer to that, but we still have more students to serve in Tennessee who are the most needy. One of the other pieces here is a 2.5% increase on the base appropriation to our non-formula units. As Stephen mentioned in the introduction, our non-formula units are everything other than our colleges and universities and TCAT. So that includes our colleges of medicine, our veterinary college at UT, our agriculture extension and education units, as well as our system offices and our program initiatives. This $9.3 million increase also includes many of the programs that you're familiar with that we do here at THEC. So Veterans Reconnect, the Tennessee Promise Forward Grant Program to help institutions develop intervention strategies for Promise students. The Institutional Outcome Improvement Fund, which I run, which allows institutions to develop programs to increase their institutional outcomes as measured in the outcomes formula. It also includes Advise TN and other initiatives that you're familiar with related to the Drive to 55, like sales. Lastly, $9.6 million for our strategic initiatives, and that's already come up twice, I think, already today, the strategic initiative request that we're putting in front of you today. This $9.6 million includes $1 million for relational advising across the TBR systems, and so that will allow TBR to put advisors on each of their community college campuses and then have a position at their central office. We're also recommending $3 million for the Centers of Excellence in Addiction Medicine at the UT Health Science Center, which President DiPietro mentioned earlier today. And they're focusing on addiction medicine or addiction science and the opioid crisis in Tennessee. And lastly, just over $600,000 for the ETSU College of Medicine to increase the partnership between the College of Medicine and the Children's Hospital in Johnson City. They've done a lot of really good work there with the medical students at ETSU and the Children's Hospital in Johnson City. Looking specifically at our formula units, so our units that are part of the outcomes-based funding formula. Of that $55 million, $50.6 million are directed to those units, so our community colleges and universities. With that recommendation in mind of $50.6 million, these are our top performers this year. We always like to show this slide. Motlow State and Volunteer State both will have double-digit increases in their funding. They are two of our community colleges that have benefited the most from the Promise program. They have seen some of the largest increases in first-time freshmen related to that program, and we'll talk a little bit more about Volunteer here in just a couple minutes. For our universities, our top two performing universities are the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga for the second year in a row, our top performing university, UTC, and Tennessee Tech University with a 6.5% increase. Also, $4.4 million for our TCATs. Our TCATs are performing exceptionally well. Though they are judged in a different model, their model is tied not only to enrollment, but to performance, because at a TCAT, if you enroll, you graduate. And so even though the model is focusing on enrollment, those students are completing. And so as their enrollment increases, which garners more funding, their completers are increasing as well. So looking specifically, this is where we get into the analysis part of all this data that we have. The next two charts I'm about to show you, we can do this for every single one of our institutions. So to our institution presidents and system representatives here, if you see something, you want us to reproduce it for you, come and speak to your campus. We're happy to do that at any time. Looking at Tennessee Tech, Tennessee Tech experienced a 9% increase in their associates and bachelor's degrees. And you're probably wondering, does Tech offer associate degrees? They do, through the reverse transfer program, which we're going to talk about a little bit in a couple of minutes. And the reverse transfer program is a partnership between our community colleges and our universities, where if a student transfers from a community college before completing an associate's degree, the university can work in conjunction with that community college to help that student complete that degree while they're at the university. So a 9% increase in bachelor's and associate degrees awarded from 15-16 to 16-17. So our most recent year of data is 16-17. That 9% increase is worth about $700,000 to TTU this year of their $3 million total increase in investment under that $50 million. About $700,000 of that is due strictly to production of undergraduate degrees, which is very impressive. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, just to go slightly off script, but it feels odd to discuss Tennessee Tech here with the Tennessee Tech president and not maybe ask Dr. Oldham if you'd be willing to just kind of come to the podium. This has been, I think, a culmination of a lot of work. And if you'd be willing to share with the commission kind of the efforts that now are, you can see unfold in the data.
Well, thanks for the warning, Mike. It's good afternoon to everyone. It's a pleasure to talk, and it's a great credit to a lot of wonderful faculty and staff at Tennessee Tech to see these data up here. And I think everybody understands this is a very dynamic situation that we're dealing with within the state of Tennessee, and it's all positive. But so many of the policy changes that have occurred recently have just upended a lot of the status quo. And so there's a lot of moving parts on all of our campuses. And a lot of people on every campus are working feverishly to try to normalize things in a way that's most positive. And so, I think what you see here for Tennessee Tech, at least, is certainly not a culmination, because this is work that continues on a daily basis. But it's all centered towards student success and toward getting students to the graduation point and hopefully even beyond to very successful careers. And that's ultimately our goal. But a lot of the things here go back several years now, actually, to initiatives to, first of all, improve student retention. It's hard to get them to graduate if they're not in school any longer. And so to improve student retention early on, to keep them in school, to keep them engaged in meaningful ways on campus, and ultimately to see them graduate. We had some pretty significant freshman classes 4, 5, 6 years ago. Of course, Tennessee Promise has sort of changed that dynamic the last couple of years on most of our campuses. And so, it's hard to know or predict exactly what this is going to look like 2 or 3 years down the line. But as that stabilizes and renormalizes, I think we'll continue to see this. Ultimately, the good news is that more students are graduating successfully in record time and going on to very successful lives. So that's what this is all about. Thanks.
I would just like to point out that I tried to get TTU's purple exactly right. So it matched the tie that Dr. Oldham has on. So undergraduate degrees are up at TTU. The other thing of interest here is looking at degrees per 100 FTE. And so Dr. Oldham did mention, the effects of promise. And so sometimes that affects your first 2 years of students, so your enrollment might be affected by that. But what Tech is doing is they're being more efficient with who they have. So not only are they increasing their bachelor's degree production, but they're doing it with fewer students. So they're being more efficient with the students that they have. So they are retaining them at higher rates. They are completing them at higher rates. And eventually we will see that in their graduation rate. Now the graduation rate is an incomplete measure because it's based on a cohort and students come in and out. And so, we're more focused a lot of times on the efficiency metric, that degrees per 100. Similarly, looking at Volunteer State, so as mentioned, Volunteer and Motlow had some of our highest increases in enrollment related to Promise. In fact, Volunteer had a 50% increase in first-time freshman enrollment in that first class of Tennessee Promise students in 2015. Related to that, those students, as I believe Chancellor Tidings mentioned earlier, they're just now starting to graduate, they're starting to complete, and so it should be no surprise that we're starting to see those students progress past that last benchmark before they get to their completion metrics. So our first and second years of the Promise program are tripping this 36 credit hour benchmark at Volunteer. In fact, this is up 20% from 15-16 to 16-17, which is almost 300 more students who have crossed that 36-hour credit benchmark at Volunteer in 1 year. And that is translating into increased associate degrees. Volunteer awarded nearly 1,000 associate degrees in 16-17 to their students. And if you take into account their reverse transfer degrees, they added another 100 more. So that puts them at over 1,000 degrees awarded to students through either partnerships or to native students on their campuses. And this is pretty phenomenal for that campus. So looking specifically at university outcomes across all institutions. So this is an aggregate table showing all of our outcomes at our institutions. And while we see increases in almost everywhere, except for those first years of the progression metric, and that's mostly a drop-off of enrollment, either related to Promise or because the economy is so great right now. So we're rolling off some of those last years of the last recession. And so the new years, if you have fewer students, you can't get as many of them across that 30 and 60-hour benchmark. But of particular interest here are the awards. So what our universities are doing with their students, who they're completing. From 15-16 to 16-17, our universities completed almost 1,000 more people in either bachelor's and associate degree programs, master's programs, or doctoral programs. So almost 1,000 more degrees. This is pretty phenomenal that we're continuing to do this even as the economy is better and enrollments continue to sort of plateau at our institutions. This is also really at the core of the Drive to 55 program. We're never going to get to 55 without completion. So, looking at community colleges, another point of interest here for community colleges, again, you'll see those first two, and again, the community colleges had the most increase related to the recession for their enrollment. So even though their enrollments are increasing because of Promise, they're not increasing at the same rate as they did during the recession. So you will see smaller declines there in the first two benchmarks, but everything else is pretty impressive. And again, focusing specifically on the awards. Between 15-16 and 16-17, community colleges awarded almost 600 more associate degrees, 1 to 2 year certificates, and less than 1 year certificates. So again, another 600 awards in 1 year. Also of interest here is dual enrollment. So this is a tangential piece of the Drive to 55, and why this is important is this is opening access to students and getting high school students accustomed to college before they show up. So by offering dual enrollment courses to high school students, we're getting them prepared to participate in Promise, prepared to participate in the Drive to 55. And in 16-17, nearly 20,000 students participated in dual enrollment at our community colleges. Dual enrollment's happening at our universities too. It's not included in our formula at this time, but so it's not just 20,000 students. It's more than that because our universities are helping as well. Yes, ma'am.
Go back to that slide for just a minute and
Yes.
talk to us about workforce training.
Sure.
Up 12.4%, please.
Yes, ma'am. So the workforce training metric is because it's so large and so easy to change. So workforce training is based on partnerships between our community colleges and the local workforce. And you can offer, these are contact hours, so they're not for credit, but so they can be offered in order to retool the training for people in the workforce. They can be used to provide training for then that person to go out and get a certification through a national organization. They're also through contracts with businesses, they offer things like OSHA training. They offer post-training for our police and firefighters. But the workforce training metric itself is very large, and so it's very easy to move up and down. It depends on what your business is doing, what your contracts look like. But we think that this is a good measure for community colleges because it does show interaction with the workforce between the community colleges and the local businesses. We are seeing year-to-year growth for most of our institutions for this. And that 12% increase is pretty on par for us. We normally see a double-digit increase for workforce training. It's been growing. One of the main examples of workforce training is at Chattanooga State Community College. They have a great partnership with Volkswagen, offering pretty much all of the training required for the Volkswagen program down there. And I know that Volunteer State has a great partnership with the federal government to offer all OSHA training for pretty much the Southeast. So these are things that are important that our institutions are doing. Yes, ma'am.
I'm so sorry, but could you talk to us about the 7+% decline in job placements?
Yes. So this is a the job placement measure. We now use a statewide database. So we're using the Tennessee labor workforce data and looking at it's the second year of doing that. Thank you, Director Krause. So it's the second year of moving to that metric. And what we're finding is we're identifying people who are staying in the Tennessee workforce. And so we're looking at the Tennessee workforce, and I think many of our students, rather than leaving college and getting a job before completing, are staying to complete, and we're starting to see that in some of our job placement data. So before, when the economy was ramping up, our job placement numbers were going up exponentially. Now that the job market and the higher education market, you can go to college for free now. So for community colleges, I think students are deciding to stay, and we're seeing a decline year to year. 3-year average to 3-year average, it's still pretty steady, but that year-to-year decline. And I will say this measure comes to us from the Academic Affairs Division. It's part of the quality assurance measure, and we can get you any additional data you would like about it from that, looking specifically at each institution and what that looks like. We pull it on a quarterly basis. And so we have 15 or 16 quarters in the most recent report. We have a lot of extensive data, so we can definitely provide additional information. So another thing that we're focusing on now that we have promised graduates is what we're referring to as the promise and outcome pipeline. So how are these students affecting outcomes that we're seeing in the funding formula? And looking specifically at our progression metrics in a given academic year, promise students account for just over 1/3 of all of our progression metrics. So that's very important. So this is definitely helping our community colleges perform well in the funding formula. Once these students hit these progression metrics, most of them stay in school. And they're either going to complete a degree at the institution that they're at, or they're going to transfer to another institution. So looking specifically at completions for associate degrees. So what are these promise students doing for our completion rates with associate degrees? In 16-17 of the associate degrees awarded, 14% went to promise students. If you look at the non-adult population, so if you look at just your traditional age student, it's 1/4 of associate degrees that go to promise students at our community colleges, which is very impressive. Speaking specifically about, again, Motlow, 34% of all associates at Motlow were promise students. And if you exclude the adult completers, 44% were promise students. So again, Motlow has experienced an increase in enrollment that related to promise that is unheard of, and they are completing those students. So it's not just that they're enrolling them, they're finishing them as well. Now looking at the transfer out of our transfer out students. So these are students who leave the community college and transfer to either another community college or a university to complete their degrees. Of the transfer outs, 13% were promise students. And of particular interest here is once those students leave and go to universities, what are they doing? Well, what we know is that over 100 of them have already tripped the 30 semester credit hour benchmark at our universities. Over 50 have already done the 60 credit hour benchmark, and over 20 have already done the 90. And through the reverse transfer program, we're already awarding associate degrees to those students. Almost, I think 10, we awarded 10 in 16-17 associate degrees through the reverse transfer program. So our universities and community colleges are working together to help these students to complete, and we're very proud of that. Now, one of the other things that we're focused on at this point is this idea of access and degree production. So looking at the drive to 55 from the beginning to the end. So how do we get you in and how do we get you out? focusing specifically on dual enrollment, and we've already talked about this. So just to put in perspective the magnitude of the increase in dual enrollment over the last 12 years, as I mentioned earlier, almost 20,000 students participated in dual enrollment at just the community colleges in 16-17. In 2004-05, less than 3,600. So, I mean, this is an exceptional increase in bringing college to students who are still in high school, showing them that they can do it and that they should be prepared to go and that college is for them. Looking at completion, back in 2004-05, just under 25,000 bachelor's, associates, and certificates. And in 16-17, we were just under 38,000. And this is a harder metric to move. Bachelor's degrees can sometimes take 10 years. Even if you're graduating on time, that's 4 years of 4 years of investment.
One thing I'd say to the commission, again, kind of the body that's charged to think really big picture for the state, that red line is exactly what we need to be seeing. That is an envied line by other states. To have grown our degree production by that much in 12 years, if you think about the time window we now have between here and 2025, it makes us really optimistic. And Dr. House, her projections show we will reach the drive to 55. In fact, we may reach it slightly early because of that very steep increase in awarding credentials.
Mike, one of the things you may want to look at with this data on dual enrollment is such great data is the degree to which it lowers student debt and student cost.
Sure.
Because I think it has a significant impact. I don't know what the magnitude of it is because we haven't looked at it specifically, but I would imagine it's fairly meaningful.
We will look at that. Dual enrollment is evolving in the state. We have just now, really within the last 3 years, gone to 2 free courses for every student. I will just tell you we still have some challenges on dual enrollment. We are generally serving right now a student that is already going to college. And dual enrollment is an accelerant. That's an important accelerant to your point, Dr. Rudd. But I think our next challenge is to figure out how to get the student that maybe isn't going to college to take some dual enrollment. Last year, our academic profile, our demographic profile, the median income's over $80,000 for the household. Most of these students, I believe, were 70% white, if not higher. We feel like that's the next challenge, is kind of an equity challenge to make sure that dual enrollment is not being offered equally. And interestingly, what we're learning is the gatekeepers to dual enrollment are not at our colleges. It's a high school counselor who has maybe decided certain students are dual enrollment material and not out of anything malicious, maybe others aren't. Changing how we think about that, which we're working with Chancellor Tidings on technical dual enrollment. Maybe dual enrollment isn't just about English 101 anymore. Maybe it's some of our mechatronics programs. That's our big challenge ahead for this program.
Dr. Krause, is there also a nexus between dual enrollment and the Gear Up grant and what we may be able to do in terms of the additional monies that might be going to schools that where we can get counselors to be able to help assist students who may not be thinking about college today, but get them into a dual enrollment program early?
Yes, sir. So Gear Up, first, the acronym Gear Up actually tells the story. It's gaining early awareness of post-secondary opportunities, but awareness and readiness. Gear Up and Advise Tennessee put boots on the ground in schools. And if you are a school counselor right now, your job has evolved into becoming the building logistician, administering tests, scheduling classes. What Gear Up and Advise Tennessee do is put somebody in the classroom that is only thinking about college pathways. And certainly, and I'm looking at Troy, it feels like a really important deliverable is being able to ensure that dual enrollment conversations get out of the AP classes, which is very frustrating for us, that the overlap between students taking AP and students taking dual enrollment is very high versus a student using dual enrollment purely, the odds maybe they could graduate with a technical credential simultaneously with their diploma.
It's actually a great segue because I'm just going to give you a wrap-up slide and then we're going to vote. In conclusion, the recommendation in front of you today includes $50.6 million to fund the outcome growth in the outcomes-based funding formula, as well as $4.4 million to recognize the enrollment and completion success at our Tennessee Colleges of Applied Technology. It also includes a state investment of $20.5 million in our Tennessee Student Assistance Award that supports our most needy students across our state. Additionally, the recommendation presents $9.3 million for our non-formula units and program initiatives, as well as $9.6 million to fund 5 strategic initiatives outlined in your notebook. The recommendations are the core of a $1.59 billion higher education operating appropriation request and represent a total increase in recurring and non-recurring funds by the state of Tennessee in higher ed of just over 6%. I'm happy to answer any further questions there might be. If not, THEC staff recommend approval of the items outlined in Agenda Item 5.
Thanks, Crystal.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Ms. Collins, one question. You started off talking about the effort toward affordability. How would you characterize sort of our distance to affordability, recognizing that there are a lot of factors like CPI and other things that play into that, but have you sort of projected out what it would take for us to get to a state of affordability within Tennessee?
I would say that most of our conversations around affordability are related to tuition. So that's where we are starting those conversations when we talk about affordability. And then what we do is, after we've recognized what we think our students and their families should pay or could pay, we then look at how the state could provide funds to make that possible for our institutions. I would say that we haven't mapped out going forward what that would look like, but we are going to have a long-term financial plan that we are currently working on as part of the Focus Act that will do that for us. So we will look at affordability and the investment from the state and institutions and what that will look like for our families.
One of the most basic measures we can use, though, is looking at our peers, and especially regionally within the SREB region. And we remain an average cost state in the SREB. There are others who are cheaper. There are several others that are more expensive. That's probably, I think, the most basic measure we use. I'm really glad Crystal referenced the strategic financial plan, which I think gives us a much better answer to your question. Is Dennis Jones still here? Dennis, many of you all know, President Emeritus of NCHEMS, is helping us with that work. Dr. Collier is part of the focus transition, is helping. That is a statutorily mandated duty as well. So we must deliver a report that takes a look at a long-term glide slope into affordability and answers kind of the big question that Dennis has been asking for a couple of years, which is how do you pay for the Drive to 55?
And lastly, Commissioner Stafford, Taylor Odell, who is about to come up as soon as we vote, is going to talk specifically about how affordability was a part of the discussion for this year's tuition recommendation and how inflation factors like CPI are related to our tuition model and what we're bringing to you today.
Other questions of Crystal? Dr. DiPietro.
Crystal, so this is a really strong budget. I'm really happy about it. But I see a worrisome trend in the strategic initiatives area from the standpoint of sort of what I would call as fuzzy or drift in the allocation of those funds to a non-formula enterprise. I think the initiative that this body undertook in regard to the capital outlay process, given the Focus Act, emergence of the LGIs, I think it'd be a really best practice if this commission would indicate to staff that they ought to undertake a review of this aspect of budget development, strategic initiatives, to give us better guidance and more clarity about how those are going to work in the future.
I think that's a well-made point. Yes, sir.
And we'll accept that, Dr. DiPietro, certainly on behalf of the THEC staff. I thought the capital process, we're going to talk a lot about capital in a little bit, but I thought the capital process was a great chance for us to collaboratively hit reset a little bit and build towards some common goals. There is no bad that can come out of looking at our strategic initiative funding process similarly.
Other questions or comments? Yes, sir.
That'd be a good time to talk about our work on the funding formula.
That would be a fantastic time to talk about that, Mr. Comptroller.
We should have out today or the next couple of days an analysis of the funding formula. It doesn't deal with a lot of things we talked about the judgment calls. It's simply the mechanics of the formula, how it works. They'll have it up, you can see it, you can play with it, you can see how the mechanics are, so that to avoid that confusion. And we've got a revision of the funding formula coming up not that far away. A lot of those decisions made to create what we had were done in a vacuum, and so we have to know what we're doing. And so we've got what we think the ground rules are. We've seen how the mechanics of how it works. It's not designed to make the value adjustment, many of which we heard just then. but it's designed to say exactly how it works and also to verify it.
I just want to add to that, and thank you, Comptroller. We have worked very closely with your staff, Josh Testa, who's here today, who is probably the leading expert on outcomes-based funding formula now in the state, behind us three, perhaps. We'll entertain a discussion, cocktail discussion later about that. But we have been reviewing the work and have been providing feedback, but we're really excited about the outcome and the output.
We saw a really powerful presentation from the comptroller last year in committee on the K-12 formula, the BEP, and it was an eye-opener, I think, for many members of the General Assembly. To now be able to have that capability for the higher ed formula is a tremendous asset.
Other comments or questions? Very good discussion. Hearing none, I'm happy to entertain a motion to adopt the recommendations as presented. So motion, is there a second? There's a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify so by saying aye.
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 Are there any opposed?
So me as abstain.
Yes, sir. Please let the minutes reflect that. Comptroller Wilson abstained. The ayes have it. Motion carries. Thanks very much. Next is item number 6, student fee recommendations. Taylor, I think you've got that one.
Thank you, Chairman Cope, Director Krause, and members of the Commission. To Mr. Stafford's point exactly, we hope to outline the staff recommendation for our guiding tuition and fee ranges this year and discuss how staff came to those fee recommendations. And as a reminder, the Focus Act empowers the Commission to issue binding tuition ranges applicable to in-state undergraduate students. And the Commission issues 2 ranges annually. One applicable to the maintenance fee, commonly referred to as tuition, and one range to the increase for both the maintenance and mandatory fee charged to those in-state undergraduate students. At the May quarterly meeting, the Commission issued a 0 to 4% binding range for all institutions for both of those ranges, and we reported to you in July that the average tuition and fee increases at our institutions was around 2.6%, falling close to the middle of that range, and in alignment and below national average increases over time. This graph shows the combined individual year increases in that both range, that tuition and mandatory fee ranges. Something to note that THEC and Tennessee should be very proud of is one, the line is going down, that these increases year over year are becoming lower, and one, additionally, that these lines are becoming more consistent over time. They're not divergent. The increases at community colleges are similar to the increases at universities. So this is becoming more predictable for students and families. And that 2.6% increase average for the 17-18 academic year represented the 3rd consecutive year of lowest tuition increases in over 4 decades for the state of Tennessee. And outlined in your packet is that staff recommendation of a 0 to 3% tuition range and a 0 to 3% tuition and mandatory fee guidance range. And I'd like to review how Commission staff consider student affordability and how we come to those ranges over time. These are 3 important factors to that deliberation and consideration, but the number 1 factor is affordability for students and families, and we have multiple factors and metrics that point toward our conceptualization of how affordable higher education in Tennessee is. One being the robustness of our state financial aid programs. Tennessee has the 4th largest per capita grant program in the country. And we are very proud of the item that you just voted on, increasing the TSAA award for students to assist those additional students who are financially needy so that they can access higher education, as well as the robustness of our Hope Lottery Scholarship Program and the availability of grant aid it provides to our students as they access higher education. Next are the average debt of our graduates and what those graduates do with that debt once they leave higher education and enter the workforce. Tennessee has the 17th lowest average debt level of graduates across the country, and the cohort default rate for those students who graduate with debt is near the national average. And these are reports that are projected and produced by federal and non-government organizations year over year, and THEC staff do in-depth analyses of these reports to not only benchmark ourselves against the national average, but with our regional and constructed peer groups. I will also mention that we also monitor, as to Mr. Stafford, Commissioner Stafford's point, the questions about peer increases in fees over time. Nationally, last year, university average tuition increases were at 3.1%, and community colleges were at 2.9%. So our institutions came in below each of those ranges, and as Director Krause mentioned, Tennessee higher education institutions rank at 5.4 out of 10 for our SREB regional peers, so right in the middle of that affordability for tuition and fees over time. Another important factor as we consider the budgets of higher education institutions and those two main revenue streams, tuition and fees from students and appropriations from the state. And if you'll recall from the July meeting when we presented the proposed operating budgets for the year, Commissioner Stafford asked an exceptional question regarding this mix, this change over time, and how students and their families were continually paying a larger portion than state appropriation. And that is a trend that we hope continues over time, that these recurring increases, as Crystal outlined, in state investments allow tuition increases to remain low or near 0% over time. That's a critical portion. And so as we consider what those changes mean over time, we monitor the enrollment and the enrollment projections of our universities, community colleges, and TCATs, and what that enrollment fluctuations mean for the total tuition and fee revenue available to our institutions. And we also consider, as Director Krause mentioned, the affordability for students and families and what they are paying over time. And we utilize, with a keen eye toward the Consumer Price Index, as a proxy for what students and their families feel as they're having those conversations around the dinner table of going to higher education and accessing higher education. We're also aware, however, that our institutions purchase a different basket of goods than do students and their families. They operate differently, they have significant staffing requirements and specific regulatory expenditures that they are required to comply with. And so we also have an eye toward the Higher Education Price Index. And this index has been volatile over time, but it's coming in very closely this year. You'll see that 2.5%. That represents the faculty salary portion of the Higher Education Price Index, which is very close to the Consumer Price Index of this year. And finally, we consider and make this guiding tuition recommendation in concert with that operating appropriation recommendation increase. This $55 million, as Crystal mentioned, as it makes its way through the General Assembly and the state legislature, will give us a better idea of how low we can keep tuition this year and what exactly this means for students and families as we shift the burden away from them for funding their education. So as a reminder, as I mentioned before, the Commission issued those 0 to 4% binding ranges in May of this year, and the average tuition and fee increase at our institutions was 2.6%. For the academic year of 2018-19, the staff recommendation is that at this time, the Commission issue a guiding range of 0 to 3% for both the tuition range and the combined tuition mandatory fee range. This is applicable to in-state undergraduate students, and we anticipate as this recommendation makes its way to the Governor's Office and through the General Assembly, and as Commission staff have a better idea of the total operating appropriation to higher education, we will bring those figures and our revised estimates to the Commission in May to make those two binding recommendations. And if today this guiding range of 0 to 3% is adopted, we anticipate institutions falling again near the middle of this range. This would continue that low decline of tuition and fees and the consistency for student and families as they consider affording higher education in Tennessee, and it would again represent now the fourth lowest consistent tuition and fee increase in nearly 4 decades. So again, the staff recommendation is a 0 to 3% increase for tuition and a 0 to 3% increase for tuition and mandatory fees applicable to all institutions.
Thanks, Taylor. Mayor Warden?
Just a sequence question here. The recommendations for THEC for the Student Assistance Corporation. Make those after when the staff
We actually do the reverse, Mayor, so that the TSAC Board of Directors actually met about 4 weeks ago. So that's loaded up the TSAA recommendation. We then bring that to you as part of this holistic package. So TSAC Board of Directors has already voted.
Questions or comments of Taylor?
I have a comment.
Yes, sir.
So, Taylor, and to the Commission, if you utilize 2.5% as the salary piece of the HEPI, and then you look at our non-formula unit allocation of 2.5% across the board, those are units, I would remind the Commission, that do not have the latitude of very robust tuition engines. So as a result, at 2.5%, we've calculated it. We're still, if the state would decide to award a 3% salary increase as a pool this year, we would still be behind $3 million or more. So the reality is, in the future, as we construct the appropriations side of the House, I think we need to look at these non-formula units And if you set them at that 2.5%, and the HEPI's sitting there at 2.5% on salary, they will not have an adequate pool to provide an increase that we think would be reasonable, let alone any other fixed cost increases they have. Just a comment.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? If not, I'll happy to entertain a motion to adopt the recommendation.
Move.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Hearing a second, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed?
Yes.
One abstention.
Just one quick comment, if I might.
Yes, sir.
When we look at how elaborate and thorough our formula is now, our state is just amazing at the progress that has leader fundings. Hitting that you mentioned, Dr. Folger. A model to be. I've watched it.
You're here. Thank you, Mayor Warden. Right, in the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Motion carries. Next is item number 7, 2018-2019 capital projects recommendations. Mr. Gentile.
Thank you, Chairman Cope, Mike Kraus, members of the commission. We had an exciting challenge put in front of us with Focus as we went from 2 capital outlay priority lists coming from TBR and UT to now 8 capital outlay priority lists coming from TBR, UT, and the 6 LGIs. However, that was a challenge, and about over a year ago, we started thinking through, well, how can we best bring together one formal recommendation to the commission? And we had brought together a capital review team that included members of TBR, UT, and the LGIs, state representatives, members from our staff, the commission, as well as the commission in general. And we embarked on a 8-month-long process to determine exactly what our new process was going to be, because we saw an opportunity not only to answer that question, answer that challenge, but to better this process for the state and for the institution. What served us before, what served us very well, was the former capital process, blending those 2 priorities together, TBR and UT. We had an eye toward prioritizing renovation over construction, an eye toward academic classrooms first before office buildings. But now, taking a step back, we have a more in-depth process, and this body approved our policy back in July. It was informed in large part about a year ago. I was standing in front of this body as you presided over the Drive to 55 Project Capacity Fund. That was a $25 million budget, you guys might recall, for those of you who are in the room, which we distributed to 10 different institutions to provide new construction and major renovation. Part of that process, we required a lot from our institutions. We asked them specifically how those projects were going to meet state policies, Drive 55 being one, institutional policy, space needs, and we went on from there. What we discovered was there's a lot of information from capital outlay projects that we need to have, we haven't received in the past, and now we are receiving. And so our new proposal process, we have got between 20 and 30 pages for each of our proposals that answer the questions how the capital outlay process for the institution will meet state goals, Drive to 55 being the primary one. However, a lot of our institutions are meeting other goals beyond that, like workforce training, as well as research and service to the state. Number 2 was institutional goals as detailed in the campus master plan and the strategic plan. Earlier, we heard from Dr. Ben West, and this body approved the new master plan at Lone Oaks Farm. Those master plans have long served as the guiding light as far as what were the capital outlay priorities for those projects, put together by independent consultants. We are aligning that master plan to our process, as well as strategic plans that show how well those capital outlay projects meet the goals of the university, community college, TCATs, and non-formal units. Space needs, facility assessments. Why In what way will these buildings add to the footprint that have been identified as a need? What were the facility assessment scores for the buildings that are being renovated or demolished to make way for this new piece of property? And then finally, business plan, the cost analysis, ongoing cost analysis, the migration plan, which lays out, well, when you build this building, what will you do with the classes that you are displacing? We've asked institutions to tell us that so that we know this is well planned out. And finally, the fifth component, external funding, the match. You may recall from prior years that we had a 25% match requirement on capital outlay projects. We recognize that from much discussion that certain entities have a harder time raising that 25%, especially based on the types of buildings. New construction will bring about more match, more funding opportunities than, say, a renovation of a classroom building. So we've modified our match requirements, still requiring a match, but a minimum to play to be reviewed, and then anything above that is factored into our analysis process. We had a very robust response this year. We received $800 million in requests from 22 proposals, covered all 8 governing boards. To give you an idea, we tend to recommend between $300 and $350 million per year. So receiving $800 million in requests provided this to be a rather competitive process. To say the least. Some benefits that have come across that, we've heard from our systems that they have thought about capital in new and different ways, bringing together not just the facility staffs, but academic staff as well. We have done that here at THEC in reviewing this process, and I'm not going to name the people who participated at this time, but I want to thank them because in that group of the review process, we had a licensed architect, we had a staff member who's been working with capital projects for several decades now, a member of our academic affairs division to weigh in academically on what this added, and more, including members of our own team. It was a long process. I believe I saw my hairline receding actively throughout the process, which is fine. Nothing wrong with that at all. But we feel very good about where we are right now, and I'm going to walk you through a little bit of our projects, starting off to know that we are recommending to you as staff to the commission $371 million for our top 10 projects. Now, not formally a part of our review process, though we were interested in seeing how this would play out. We're happy to say that there is equity across our governing boards, our LGIs, our TBR, and UT. I'll walk you through the top 3 projects that we have. I can go ahead and tell you that in our top 10, we have 3 LGI projects, 2 UT projects, and 5 TBR projects. So our number 1 project, it is MTSU Academic Classroom Building. The state request is $35 million, and it will provide many things, but specifically a new center for the College of Behavioral and Health Sciences. There's a lot we know about this building because of this process. First of all, they've been planning this actively since 2012, 2013. This building is really ready to go, and that showed through the proposal process, and that is why it is our number 1 project. It will house criminal justice, psychology, and other programs that will allow, this building will allow those programs to increase 25% of the students it is serving, to go from 1,100 to 1,300 in total. In these particular disciplines, we see annual occupational increase of 1% per year. So there is a job demand for these areas. The master plan tells us that this has been a capital outlay priority since 2008 for this building. So we know that this is a big need for MTSU, and it will fulfill a space deficit of 31,000 square feet. Number 2 project, UT Institute of Agriculture. It's a $75 million request approximately. It will support biosystems engineering and social science, entomology and plant pathology, wildlife and fisheries, and plant services. This building, the Ellington building, currently houses 15 majors. It will serve 1,500 undergraduate students, 160 graduates, and over 75 PhD students. We are very excited about what this will do for the Drive to 55, as well as research needs for the state. And our 3rd project is Cleveland State Community College for $23 million. This will be the first major capital outlay project in decades for Cleveland State. And this is called the campus revitalization because it will in part bring their footprint up to modernization in modern times. It will provide great access to high demand fields via their health and science buildings. It will have a potential increase of 50% in the medical services, new programs like medical lab technicians, occupational therapy, and more. This is phase one of the revitalization, and it is again for $23 million. As you draw your eye down the rest of this top 10, you'll see a technology building for Columbia State at number 4. At number 5, another UT Institute of Agriculture Vet Med Teaching and Learning Center, TCATS Phase 3, which will serve Chattanooga, Hohenwald, Hartsville, Morristown, and there's a fifth that I'm forgetting off the top of my head. This will round out the TCAT master plan that this body approved back in 2014. Number 7, Roan State Project. Number 8, what is number 8?
Number 7 was
I was got on a good
MTSU
roll there, I
in
gotta
Hillel.
say. Number 7, MTSU is a mechatronics building. Number 8, Roan State. Number 9, ETSU Humanities Building. And number 10 is a joint collaboration between some TCATs and Columbia State for a facility at Columbia State. You can see across this board complete equity, and I'm happy to entertain any questions that you may have about this.
Questions for Mr. Gentile? Comments in general?
Our next part of our recommendation is capital maintenance. We have the same challenge with capital outlay that we have, capital maintenance that we have with capital outlay, where we move from 2 to 8 priority list on capital maintenance. Tennessee has had a long tradition of funding deferred maintenance. Not all states do this. A lot of states look to Tennessee with envy. A lot of states expect the higher ed institutions to fund their own maintenance. And Tennessee institutions do here to an extent, but it is nice to receive, on average, $70 million from the state in capital maintenance. This year, we refined how we are apportioning our capital maintenance dollars to all 8 governing boards. We've looked at, as far as pool calculations for capital maintenance based on use of the facility. A science building will have more maintenance upgrades needs than, say, an office building. We have also considered the age of the facility and the overall size of the facility. But we are recommending to you about $120 million for capital maintenance. These capital maintenance will serve for things like the HVAC upgrades at the Gentry Center at TSU for $300,000, roof replacements at UT Knoxville for $5 million, and science building interior upgrades at Dyersburg for $1.5 million. In addition to the $120 million, we're taking an opportunity to look at special initiatives that will allow us to address some needs. Last year, we received $40 million in recurring capital maintenance from the state, which allowed us to think more strategically on how we're funding capital maintenance. So we've requested $5 million from the state for those special initiatives. And that will include perhaps minor renovations for academic advisor needs at certain institutions. But this is what we recommend regarding capital maintenance. Any questions?
Is the $5 million, is that in recurring funds or is that just one-time funding?
It will be. We are requesting that it itself is one-time funding for these needs, but it is part of the $40 million recurring that we receive each year.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions about capital maintenance?
All our facilities.
Yes. We have an opportunity. First of all, I want to say that our division, fiscal policy, will be a future cousin of the capital division of the Finance Bureau under Jason Cavender. And we have a new capital architect coming to work at THEC, Patty Miller. She was at Middle Tennessee State University beforehand. And we are reconsidering ideas of how can we keep better track of facilities across the state. And identifying true needs of institutions. That is something that this money is meant to be an exploration phase for that element. But right now, we rely a lot on the projects that you see up here, identifying need. But are there ways that we can better align maintenance needs with Drive to 55, for instance, on those needs for completion? That's the idea of those funding sources. Any other questions?
All right, you've heard the recommendations from staff. This time I'll entertain a motion to adopt the recommendation.
So moved.
Motion from Dr. Dissner. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Coben. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify so by saying aye.
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 Comptroller Wilson, you abstain. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the motion carries. Thanks very much. All right. Capital Management Severance, action item number 8. Dr. Krause, I don't have who's going to present that.
I am here for that.
All right, Mr. Gentile.
Thank you again, Chairman Coe, members of the commission, Director Krause. This next element, we're actually going to have a number of action items to place in front of you: capital management severance, and then Crystal will talk about procurement severance. Along with the Focus Act, it was identified that there are several responsibilities that happen under TBR that are quite frankly rather involved. And although the LGIs were able to have their own board start up earlier this year, that there will be until December 1, 2017, after November 30, 2017, a need to remain under TBR until such severance is allowed by this body. And those 3 items that were identified in the Focus Act are capital management, procurement, and data. Data is not coming in front of you today. That is not something that this commission will act on at this time. But procurement, Crystal will go into more details for her presentation, but I want to focus on capital management. We just had a long presentation on the types of projects that we are recommending to the commission for the state to fund going forward. There are other types of projects that are institutional funded projects through gifts or reserves. All of that entails quite a process from the design phase through groundbreaking, through construction, through maintenance that involves the Office of State Architect, the State Building Commission, of which 3 of our commission members sit. And it is an involved process. And I will take this moment to commend the Office of Facilities Development at TBR for all that they do for 13 community colleges, 27 TCATs, and the 6 universities. It is a lot of work. And we at THEC get to watch from the sidelines to understand how difficult that is. Back in December of 2016, and ahead of the November 30 deadline that we have here, we sent out a memo to all 6 LGIs that said, if you want to sever effective December 1, 2017, please let us know. And here are the requirements to do so. The requirements include an organizational structure of facilities management. Who is doing what responsibility at your institution that TBR was doing before? Who is your point person to the Office of State Architect and the State Building Commission? How are you going to make your front-end documents being things like the designer's manual, the lease agreements, how are you going to make that accessible to the public? Your plan for accessing architects, engineers, and specialty consultants in alignment with state policy, and a data management software program. What TBR uses is, for the shorthand, PITS, which is basically how do you track from the beginning to the end all aspects of the State Building Commission, design, etc. It is a very involved technology, and we're needing the 6 LGIs to be prepared to implement that as soon as possible. We heard back from 2 LGIs to say that they would like to sever by December 1, and that was Austin Peay State University and East Tennessee State University. When we heard back from them, we knew that we had another requirement that was in the memo, and that was a training process and an assessment review, where THEC, over the last 9 months, we've had conversations and presentations by the state architect, Ann McGarren, others from finance and administration, from TBR come and talk about what it is they do, and Austin Peay and ETSU were in attendance for that. And then also, TBR has worked alongside Austin Peay and ETSU to train up, basically to be able to do what TBR has been doing. And over the last month, members of our staff, including Carl Minka and Jerry Preston, 2 licensed architects who are very familiar with the state's processes as they have worked at TBR, we assessed formally Austin Peay and East Tennessee State to see how well prepared they are to sever. And I'm not going to go into any of this detail, but I want you to give an idea about how complicated it can be. We went through these 15 areas to assess how proficient Austin Peay and ETSU were. Austin Peay provided us a really nice binder, as did ETSU, showing each of these areas from designer's manual all the way down to business procedures. They also provided us a matrix that we have put together that tells us who is in charge of which of these areas at their institution. After a lot of discussion and review and in coordination with the state architect and our staff here in TBR, we feel confident as staff to recommend that Austin Peay and ETSU sever on capital management. A couple of things are still going to be the case though. Close collaboration with TBR moving forward. The Department of Finance and Administration, until the end of this fiscal year, is continuing putting the finances through, circulate that through TBR, so ETSU and Austin Peay will work closely with TBR on the management of those funds. Legacy projects. TBR is still in the middle of many of those projects, so over the next couple months, we will coordinate alongside Austin Peay, ETSU, and TBR which projects TBR will maintain management of and which ones Austin Peay and ETSU will take on. Continued THEC guidance. With the help of Jerry Preston and Carl Menka, we are setting up training modules on all those areas of proficiency over the next 8 months, in part to help the next round of severance for institutions that want to sever on capital management, but also to help UT, TBR, Austin Peay, ETSU. In fact, tomorrow, TBR will be hosting a designer manual as well as a lease agreement training session, and UT will be in attendance, TBR will be in attendance, Austin Peay, ETSU, and all the other LGIs. It's an opportunity for all of these 8 entities to come together and be on the same page with these areas of proficiency. That will be continuing with THEC's guidance, and we will also serve in a process support role. And then finally, State Building Commission policy change. The state architect is working in coordination with the State Building Commission to make necessary changes regarding who's going to be signatories on all the projects so that Austin Peay and ETSU can properly present projects in front of the State Building Commission. That will happen at the earliest in January, subject to State Building Commission approval. And once that happens, then they'll be able to manage their own projects. Mike?
We'll take these as separate votes because they're separate matters before the commission. We're lucky to have both presidents here. We think it's important for you to hear from the executive perspective at that campus about the preparedness. I would just say I went to the Austin Peay site visit personally to see that firsthand. If you've gotten any sense of the gravity of this, it is a high gravity decision. It's a very big function that these campuses are taking on. And I think what we were impressed at by both Austin Peay and ETSU is they know that, and they have staffed up. They have hired considerable staffs, and both presidents have been directly involved in getting through this process. I also think it's worth mentioning we have 4 other LGIs that have not severed. We expect that to unfold over the next year, but Austin Peay and ETSU both being leaders has been fortunate. I think we learned together on some things, but the end result that's before you in these 2 votes, we believe is a good one. And I would ask Dr. White if she'd be willing just to talk on behalf of Austin Peay, and then maybe we'll hear from Dr. Nolan, and then we could do 2 sequential votes, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Thank you for the opportunity. I want to start by thanking TBR, Chancellor Tidings, and her staff for not just helping us in the transition, but helping us over the years to get our projects going. And the question that I thought you might be asking that I wanted to answer at the beginning is, well, if we have to gear up and we have to have a transition, and if we have to hire staffing, why is it better for us to have control at the local level than go through TBR? And the answer to that is, one, when you have one office that deals with essentially 40 institutions, even though you've got experts in those offices, it's really tough to process in a time frame that doesn't cost money. So while we have had to hire some folks, we really believe the savings will be there because we won't have these long delays that sometimes are just a requisite because of managing so many projects. The second piece is that the whole point of the Focus Act was to put as much control in the hands of the Board of Trustees as possible. And so when they're having oversight over me and our Vice President for Finance, who's in the back, Mr. Robinson, and our architect who's been on board for 4 or 5 years, Carl Mark Bruner, I know him too, but Mark Bruner in the back, they want to have involvement and they want to have oversight and they want to have accountability to them. So essentially, it's a question of governance and it's a question of efficiency. So I appreciate your consideration in this matter, and I have great confidence in our team, and appreciate the support of Mr. Gentile, THEC, and TBR for helping us get ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the Commission, would like to echo the comments, but want to put a frame around staffing at our university. There was a large volume of capital project work that was already underway on our campus. So with respect to staff, we've added 1 staff person to help accommodate and track this process through. The importance of this for our campus and for any campus is the ability to work through architect selection as well as construction manager selection processes. Also, the ability for an architect to work directly with the institution. In the past, if there was a challenge in terms of cost overruns, in many respects, the architect did not work for the campus, the architect worked for the board, and that quite often created some unique conversations and dynamics. Not any system is perfect, and we recognize that there will be issues moving forward under this structure, but we feel the ability for our campus, for our staff, to work directly with those individuals who are entrusted with leading the projects to closure is something that will be a positive for the university. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Nolan. All right. Yes, sir, Dr. DiPietro.
It's presupposing, and I could be wrong. Senator Baker said right. The other person could be right, just be right. But it's counterintuitive of me to actually think there could be cost savings associated with doing it at the campus level. Comment. I said it's counterintuitive to me that you could decide you were going to do this on a local campus more efficiently. And I get the governance piece. I get the contact with the architect. Those kinds of things, in my impression and from my own experience, can be worked out. We're not perfect. But it's counterintuitive to me that the campuses can do it more cost effectively than an organization doing this overarching for them. Just a comment.
Yes, sir. Any other comments or questions? Mayor Wharton?
Question, maybe a little simplistic or something. Will have it's there's no
There is a template. There's a very defined matrix that, and Stephen showed a representation. Could you go back to that? This translates basically into about an 18-page document with each of these components broken into their inherent tasks, and then the institution having to fill in how they'll address each of those. So without a template, I think it would be very hard for us. I will say a lot of our thought is about what this is going to look like before the State Building Commission. Exactly. And so we tried to take that SBC process and define it very clearly, and then have both of the institutions before you work through it, which they did.
I take it there are definitions.
Yes, sir.
Each of these blocks.
Extensively.
Yeah, I want to respond to if it's okay, Director Krause, to the comment about the cost efficiency. I do think that there will be cost savings. When you go from an entity managing 45 institutions to institutions managing themselves, there are cost savings to be. I mean, I just look at the building we completed. It had cost overruns in close to several $1 million. And had we been able to manage that ourselves, I think we would have saved that money simply because we'd had more time to be more attentive to the issues that led to the cost overrun. So I think it's important for this group to think about how you look at where the savings are, whether they're in personnel or they're actually in capital. And it may be in the building itself and the movement of the facility and the capacity to move it from design to completion that's more effective is where the savings are recovered. Because we've had that experience on our campus, and I bet some of the other LGIs have as well. Okay.
But once projects are underway, there's always a time frame, and many times construction projects fall behind. So it may be that we have funds allocated for 1 year, but as we go through our budgeting process and recommendations, there's no way in the world that particular local project is going to be where it was intended to be. So you have that money. How do we gather that information? We go institution by institution to see where they are.
Really, the building commission is kind of our sentinel body for that, and we staff the building commission full time. When the building commission's meeting, THEC's involved. Also, we ask the institutions as they have building commission transactions to make sure that we are aware of those. That's how we're normally apprised of the progress of a project.
Other comments, other questions? I think we're going to take these items one at a time. We're going to address item 8A first, which is Austin Peay State University. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, given the statutory nature of these two motions or these two recommendations, I'm going to read the motion to ensure that it's entered into the record properly. I move pursuant to Tennessee Code 49-8-101A2C that the Commission approve the request of the Board of Trustees of Austin Peay State University to assume the responsibility of the capital project management on December 1st, 2017, subject to applicable State Building Commission policies and continued guidance from the THEC staff.
Motion by Commissioner Stafford. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Watson. Any discussion? Hearing none. Do we need a roll call or voice vote is okay? Do we?
Yeah. Which vote's fine?
Two votes for it. Okay. All those in favor of the motion signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Next, we'll entertain a motion with respect to item 8B, which is East Tennessee State University. Is there a motion?
I move pursuant to Tennessee Code 49-8-101A2C. The Commission approved the request of the Board of Trustees of East Tennessee State University to assume the responsibility of the capital project management on December 1st, 2017, subject to applicable State Building Commission policies and continued guidance from the THEC staff.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There is a second. Commissioner Dishner. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify so by saying aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Next, item number 9, procurement severance. Crystal Collins.
Well, if you didn't have enough of me earlier, we're going to go again. So as Stephen mentioned in his opening remarks about capital management severance, one of the other areas identified under the Focus Act where locally governed institutions needed a little more assistance before they went completely independent on was procurement. And just briefly what procurement is it's entering into contracts. So acting as a state procurement agent, developing contracts, and awarding those contracts either through RFP, RFQ, or other non-competitive processes to other businesses, entering into contracts with other institutions or with even the systems as partner agents. This process, I will say, comparatively speaking to capital management severance, was much easier. And the reason for that is manyfold. But the core reason for that is because our LGIs, our universities, have been doing 90% of procurement on their own for years. And the reason why they've done that is because 90% of contracts are under $250,000. And those contracts were decentralized from TBR for most of our institutions. And those institutions were responsible for entering into those contracts on their own. Of particular interest related to procurement and contracts here, what independence will allow institutions to do is to write their own policies, as long as they align with state and federal law and requirements, but they'll be able to write their own policies and they'll be able to represent themselves at some of the state agencies where TBR used to represent them. So the process itself, we started in April of 2017 with a memo to all of 6 LGIs asking them, please let us know if you're interested in severing. We heard back from 3, and those are the 3 institutions that we're going to discuss today: Austin Peay State University, East Tennessee State University, and Tennessee Tech. And so we went through a rigorous process with these 3 institutions that was dependent very heavily on the help and assistance that we received from TBR. We could not have done this without Assistant Vice Chancellor Angela Flynn at TBR. We're very grateful to her and her help. Through that process, we were able to identify 4 core principles that institutions needed to meet in order to be recommended for severance. And those 4 core principles are the ones here in front of you today. I will call attention to your item, I think it's item 9, A, B, and C. A is Austin Peay, B is ETSU, C is Tennessee Tech. And we go into more depth around all of these about how each of these institutions are meeting these requirements. Everything was required to be made available online. So if you haven't visited those websites provided, we recommend, please do so. You can see all of their pro forma documents, all of their policy documents, all of their reporting. It's all online and available publicly for review by anyone. So this idea of procurement contract policies and pro forma documents. One of the things that we required was that each institution make available, as I said, their policy manuals around contracting and procurement. They made available all of their pro forma documents, which include things like their RFP, their RFQ, other ways that their pro forma contract in general. All of this information is on their websites. They had to indicate to us that all of those policy documents and the pro forma documents met all of the requirements of state and federal law so that they weren't out of alignment with how TBR had been running business for them. And they were allowed to make changes. And, we did have a couple institutions that have looked at changing their policies and procedures still in line with state law, but making local decisions around that. The next area was this idea of fiscal review, and so one of the state requirements is that any contract $250,000 non-competitive contract $250,000 or more, or an amendment to one requires review by the Fiscal Review Committee, which is a standing state agency. And so institutions now, instead of being represented by TBR, once they receive severance, they will represent themselves at fiscal review. They had to provide to us a checklist that showed that they had all of the requirements, that they understood all of the requirements that fiscal review would require of them when they brought a contract forward. And then they had to provide contact information for who would represent them at fiscal review. And that information is included in your binder. The third area is reporting requirements. All state procurement agencies are required to provide several reports to the state each year. These include reports such as the Governor's Office of Diversity Business Enterprise Diversity Report, another report for that agency for small, minority, and women-owned businesses. That agency also requires a Diversity Business Enterprise Goals Report, so they're asking institutions or state procurement agencies to identify goals for how they're going to increase the diversity of the people that they contract with. And then also a services contract report, and then any information for Senate Finance Ways and Means Committee contract reporting. All of the reporting requirements are available on their websites. So if you have a free afternoon, you can read all of those. Lastly, and probably most interestingly, is this idea of master contract severance. And so similar to how capital management, there are ongoing and legacy projects. Every single LGI is entered into at least one, if not several, master contracts as being a part of TBR. And so these master contracts are these large statewide contracts where TBR acted in good faith as the governing board of all their institutions to enter into these large contracts, think Staples or IBM or Apple. And so we wanted to be clear with the LGIs that they could sever, but they needed to stay in these master contracts until the end of the term of the contract, so as to not cause injury to institutions that were staying or were required to stay. And then at such time, if they did decide they wanted to leave the master contracts, to work with us and TBR in order to do that. And all of the institutions who came to us and asked to be severed indicated that they were amenable to that and agreed to that. So those were the 4 areas that were of particular interest to us. We received requests for severance in October from the 3 institutions I mentioned earlier. And I am available to answer questions, and then we can take up individually the 3 action items.
Mayor Warden.
This doesn't do anything to change the ability of LGIs to join co-ops. Can they still?
Yes, sir. I think what this will do is once an institution is severed, it just allows them to act on their own behalf to do that rather than having to go through TBR.
Commissioner Cogan.
Crystal, I think I thought that there would be a huge rush for severance from all 6 LGIs. And if I could, I'd love to ask President Rudd if he would describe to us where maybe you are at the University of Memphis and some of the other schools.
I think you'll be seeing the rest of us here shortly.
Okay.
It was for, I think for all of us, it was a process of how deeply embedded we were and how long it took us and is taking us to sort through of all of those different points of intersection. But I think you'll be seeing the other 3 here soon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Other comments or questions? Yes, sir.
Are there any changes in the thresholds, or is this policy address thresholds in terms of procurement requirements for an RFP or particular form of procurement?
Yes, sir. This is a great question. And so there was one change to thresholds for Tennessee Technological University, and President Oldham is here, and also their Chief Financial Officer, Dr. Stenson, who can address that if you'd like. She is prepared to. They did increase their thresholds from $10,000 for the small business to $25,000, and then increased the threshold from $50,000 to $100,000.
Well, I don't think it's necessary to delay the commission to ask them to speak to it, but I will comment that I think changing that from a more uniform requirement that the state has followed, generally is fraught with issues. I'll put it that way. So, but we can discuss that going forward. That's
In a similar vein, this doesn't do anything to change the law with respect to, there's certain services under Tennessee law that you cannot seek competitive. State general laws.
Above all else.
Yes.
Like you saying, like for professional services and things.
Professional service.
Doesn't have to be, yeah.
Cannot, doesn't it? Has to be based on. I want to make sure that that's still the case.
Yeah, yes, Mayor Wharton, they had to indicate that all policies and procedures meet state law, and they did.
Commissioner Winton, you have a question.
The fiscal review committee, that's the only committee that any of these procurements have to go through, so they'd have to go to the legislature to get those approval.
Yeah, for the
any
contracts
type
that meet those thresholds of $250,000 or more are non-competitive of that size. Yes.
Thank you.
Controller Wilson.
I think it's fair to say that we audit the institutions and we will look at procurement. That's just standard operating procedure. My point.
Good comments, good questions. All right, I think we'll take these agenda items one at a time. Is there a motion with respect to Austin Peay State University?
Mr. Chairman, I move that pursuant to Tennessee Code Annotated 49-8101A2C, Commission approve the request of the Board of Trustees of Austin Peay State University to assume the responsibility for procurement management on December 1, 2017, and that the Board of Regents no longer be responsible for the performance of this function for the university as of that date.
Very good. There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed?
I need to abstain.
Yes, sir. Comptroller Wilson abstains. Are there any opposed? Mayor Wharton?
No, I just have one quick comment after the vote.
Yes, sir. Okay, in the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The motion's carried. Mayor Wharton, you have the floor.
Just a little bit of advice. Heretofore, our colleges and universities have been free from some of the vices and evils of contracting in the public sector. While I don't complain about those vices because I sent my kids to school making a living defending folks doing that kind of stuff. I do hope that we have some provisions to make sure, I don't know whether it's covered in that template or not, that there is extensive ethics training from the secretary who makes the call to place an order for 24 mops or broom. I know you said it's under 250, but this, if we don't watch it, and I just hope that we have some way of certifying that everybody who's involved in the procurement process in any way is intimately aware of all those obligations.
Mr. Mayor, I think we are well prepared to deal with all vices and evils. You remember we are involved in NCAA athletics, and so we.
Well, the other thing I would. Two mics on there. The other thing I would say too is, in some ways, the spirit of the Focus Act, and I will say this, having attended a great deal of the meetings in the last year, I would say there is more oversight in some ways. Yeah. That board of trustees, the ones I've seen are acutely aware of everything you just mentioned, and I think you could make an argument that the oversight is tighter than it would have been in the past.
Actually, let me second that. I will tell you, just from our personal experience, I think every president that is here from an LGI would tell you that we have more activity on our audit committee and more intensity than we've ever had, more awareness of what is going on in the institution at all levels, from the board through the administration, through the faculty, through the staff, and frankly, Mr. Mayor, through the community. So I actually think we are very well positioned. I would agree.
Very good. Next item is number 9B, which is East Tennessee State University. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that pursuant to Tennessee Code Annotated 49-8-101, Section A2C, the Commission approve the request of the Board of Trustees of East Tennessee State University to assume the responsibility for procurement management on December 1, 2017, and that the Board of Regents no longer be responsible for the performance of this function for the university as of that date.
Very good. There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify so by saying aye. Aye. Comptroller Wilson, you abstain. Are there any opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Next, item 9C, Tennessee Technological University. Is there a motion? Yes, ma'am. Is there a motion?
I've done this so much, I've missed my cue. I move that, pursuant to the Tennessee Code Annotated 49-8-101, Section A2C, the Commission approve the request of the Board of Trustees of Tennessee Technological University to assume the responsibility for procurement management on December 1, 2017, and that the Board of Regents no longer be responsible for the performance of this function for the university as of that date.
We have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Comptroller Wilson abstains. Are there any opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Well, that concludes the action item on our agenda. And at this point, I don't have any further comment. Unless, Mr. Krause, you do.
Just 2 points. One, as a recipient of federal funding, we are required to file a Title VI report each year. Rather than subject you to a presentation on such, we'll be emailing it to you this afternoon. Please look on it, and we are in compliance with our Title VI requirements. And then also would go ahead and set the placeholder for January 25th for our next meeting. That is on a Tuesday, so slightly different date rhythm than we would normally have.
Let me just, I meant to say this too. Let me also just, on behalf of the entire commission, thank you, Mike, and thank your staff for the excellent work that you do. And we come to these meetings and we see the progress that we're making as a state, especially relative to the nation, and it makes us all very proud. So thank you very much. All right, with that,
23rd.
January 23rd is the next
Mr. Chairman.
meeting. Yes, sir.
I'd be remiss, having come to 7 years worth of these meetings, not to acknowledge and thank the staff for the best lunch I've ever had on TV.
Yes, sir. January 23rd. Yes, sir. Chair's going to entertain a motion to adjourn.
Yeah, we do.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
We're going to do more and more.